Tired of reading? Let the lazy husky do the work. We've got the best web novel audiobooks right here. Make sure to subscribe.
Reincarnated Cat Becomes a Magical Beast. Chapter 1. Little Kitten is reincarnated. Me. Her. What happened? How? How can I think like a human? Those were her first thoughts when she came into consciousness. Her eyes that laid shut, slowly blinked open, revealing her brilliantly sharp eyes that glittered in a mixture of a red and greenish glow. Lifting her head, she found herself in a field of grass that spanned many acres. Mountains and a forest littered the horizon, and the sky was picturesque in a soft orange glow. Looking at her own body, she found that her previous fluffy orange fur had changed to a soft and luxurious silver. Stuck in shock for a moment, she flew up and began studying her body more intently. She found that not only did her fur's color and texture change, but she had also shrunken a lot. If she were to guess, she would guess that she was about the size of a 2 to 3 month old kitten. How did this happen? The last thing I remember is being struck by what do the humans call them? A car. And then, I guess I died. So, I've reincarnated. But how did I become so smart? How can I think like this? I understand being reincarnated, but why can I remember my past life as a street cat, and why am I already aged a little, and where are my parents? Having a different body shows that I've not been teleported. This isn't important. If I don't find myself a way out of here, I'm going to eventually starve to death. With this thought, the little silver kitten's ethereal eyes began to explore her surroundings intently, hoping to find any signs of humans. For where there are humans, there is also food. As she narrowed her eyes in her search, something really shocking happened as she suddenly felt a mysterious feeling begin to swell up in her eyes as her already good sight of a cat heightened to an astonishing degree. Suddenly she could somehow see things from afar very clearly, helping her in her search. What is this? This new body is amazing. With this new sight, she flew her gaze over the horizon until she found something that made her little cute mouth twitch in excitement. Smoke. Where there is smoke there's fire, and where there is fire there is likely to be humans. With this thought process, the little cat didn't pause before leaping into a sprint. Who knew if they were only staying there temporary, she must quickly find them. Luckily it was just morning, giving her plenty of time to arrive there before night would fall and darkness would cloud her sight. Actually, this new sight might improve my night vision as well. I'll have to check at night for that. Rushing through the knee-high grass, for a little kitten, she continued her mad dash to the forest when she encountered a feeling of déjà vu as she felt that swirling of mysterious energy flow around her once again. This time it enraptured her 4 paws, and the little silver cat suddenly felt her paws harden into a never-seen-before new strength, boosting her sprint to normally unimaginable speeds. She was now speeding through the grass in a mad dash. Amazing. This body is amazing. Ha 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 ha. The little silver cat's mind was abuzz in her excitement. She had always loved the feeling of the wind flowing through her soft fur as she ran, and with this newfound speed she loved it even more. Her speed seemed to increase the further along she ran until she was reaching the realms of a cheetah's speed. It was at this point that the little cat had the realization that this really isn't normal. Enhanced vision was one thing, but for her little body to run this fast. It dawned on her that this place might not be the same place she had always known, and with this realization dawned a newfound anxiousness. Just where am I? Chapter 2. Little Kitten in Danger. The little silver kitten didn't ponder on this thought for too long, however. Right now, her survival was more important and she was getting close to the forest. It had only taken her less than 10 minutes to reach the forest, and upon entering she found herself cooled by the shade of a dozen trees. The trees in this forest were quite common, though they were rather large with several twigs intertwining with each other. The blue sky above could only be seen through minute gaps between the dark green shrubbery of the trees. The little silver kitten took a seat at the entrance of this forest as she had realized a problem. Without seeing the rising smoke, how was she going to locate the people she's trying to find? Without any alternatives, she could only try her best to walk in a straight line in the right direction and hope not to run into any trouble. She also decided to take a slower pace inside the forest, the reason being was due to her unfamiliarity of this world. Who knows what type of beast can reside in this forest? Who knows, with a split second of carelessness, a beast could swallow her whole. She had to be extra careful. With her newfound powers, she was certain that this world was not a simple place. Her thoughts complete, she entered the forest completely at a cautious pace. She was not quite running but not quite walking as well. Her feet were still coated in this mysterious energy, however, as this clever little silver kitten had realized that even while running at incredible speeds for a good distance, she had hardly decreased in stamina. She could tell that this was due to the strengthening effect this mysterious energy bestowed her. Minutes by minutes passed by. Beside the trees, she found small animals that weren't much different from her old world dashing between the trees and bushes. Thankfully, they weren't much bigger than herself and seemed to be cautious of her. She couldn't tell why they would be cautious of a small thing like her. Then she came to a realization. Maybe they could sense this energy and feared it. That told her that her newfound abilities could be sensed by these animals and that it was something that they either couldn't do or at least not as good as her, else they wouldn't seem so scared of her. She couldn't tell between the two possibilities as every animal were quick to retreat upon sight of her. After nearly half an hour of trekking through this overgrown forest, the little silver kitten sensed something that made her ears twitch. She couldn't hear it nor could she feel the vibrations on the ground. Yet she could just tell that there was a lurking danger nearby, hidden in the darkness cast by the shrubbery above. A feeling of hidden pressure weighed on her. With her jagged eyes, the little kitten slowly moved her gaze to search for the source of this danger until she had done a full 360 degrees. Yet she had failed to find even a hint of this aggressor. This made her doubt herself. Just when she had loosened her guard, a bush in her peripheral vision suddenly showed a great deal of movement as a shadowed figure shot out of it and headed straight for the little silver kitten. Frightened, she stood frozen as the figure became clear in front of her. This beast was a nimble humanoid animal. In her memories, the little cat remembered coming across a place in her past life where many animals laid behind cages. She remembered an animal called the monkey. This beast was both similar but vastly different to the monkeys she had seen. This beast was rather large, dwarfing the poor kitten. It had fur for the most part, but areas such as its long elongated arms and its forehead in particular were armored in a strong-looking shell. Its large hands had 4 fingers that were longer than a human's and had frighteningly dangerous-looking nails that looked like they could easily dig into flesh. In all her life, both lives to be exact, the little kitten had never been as scared of death as she was at this fleeting moment as the hideous beast readied its blade-like claws as it swung them in an arc, its impending destination, her. Me. Chapter 3, Little Kitten is Saved. The little kitten could only squeal in terror as her eyes closed automatically. Her only hope being that she could die instantly and painlessly. However, this fated death did not come. Instead she suddenly heard a whistling sound, as if something was flying through the air, and then she heard a loud death cry right next to her sensitive ears. Surprised from the sudden loud noise, the little kitten jumped back and her eyes shot wide open, only to find the monkey beast twitching on the ground, soon to let out its last breath. On the beast's bleeding chest, now laid a protruding object that had pierced right into its heart. Looking closely, she recognized this object to be ice. Looking in shock, it took her a few seconds before she noticed a figure come jumping into view and out of the darkness of the surrounding forest. That long-awaited human she had been searching for. Finally. This man must have come from the people who set that fire. Meaning she could finally find some food. Hopefully they will be willing to share. How strange. What's a stray kitten doing in this forest filled with dangerous magical beasts? And why was it attacked by a minor beast like the hell monkey which feeds off other magical beasts? The human mumbled to himself, strangely enough. He was a rather young lad, in the middle of his teens and had a somewhat handsome appearance. He had his jet black hair swept back into a short ponytail. His clothes were strangely clean and well designed, contrasting with the surrounding wilds. The teen first walked up to the corpse of the monkey, and before the little kitten knew it, the corpse seemed to be sucked towards the teen before vanishing. The corpse vanished, she exclaimed in thought. He then turned towards her with a pleasant smile. He gently knelt down on one knee to get closer to the little kitten he had just saved. Well, whatever caused that beast to come after you doesn't matter. Now that I've found you, you no longer have anything to fear. Let this young master take you to a safe place. With a gentle touch, the teen stroked the trembling kitten's cheek with the back of his index finger. This seemed to work in coaxing the little kitten as she began to lead into his touch, allowing him to pet her as her nerves calmed down. With this human around, the little kitten felt a lot safer. She was now deadly afraid of bumping into another beast like before, and having previously been a city cat, she was naturally more inclined towards humans than other animals. Then it's settled, little lass. Or are you a lad? Oh, you're definitely a lass, ha ha ha. The little kitten mewled as it was suddenly picked up and had its bottom part studded. How rude. Pervert. Though I guess I am a cat, so that doesn't matter. But still, it's still embarrassing, you perv. The little kitten suddenly grew aggressive as it hissed at the teen. Ah, sorry little one. Ha ha ha. Was I too rough? The teen pulled the kitten into a soft embrace and petted her, tempting to coax the little kitten's foxy temper. It seemed to work as the little kitten seemed to calm down a great deal. I'll let you off this time. Not a second time, though. Humph, the little kitten meowed, forgetting that it couldn't communicate with the teen for a brief second. She suddenly felt annoyed. What was the point of learning all this new knowledge if I can't communicate? Damn it. The little kitten didn't stress on this problem long as the teen began to walk back to the direction he had previously entered from. Walking in the cooling shade, the little silver kitten suddenly found herself tired. She felt drained physically, and she also felt that the mysterious energy had also drained a bit, which also seemed to affect her consciousness. Soon, she closed her hazy eyes and fell into a cozy sleep in the hands of the teen. The teen looked down to see this and let out a pleased giggle. This kitten, so innocent. Letting itself sleep in the arms of a strange human. This little lass is obviously a city cat. So why is it in the center of one of the most dangerous forests in the kingdom? With these thoughts, the teen continued through the forest, not letting down his guard as his eyes studied the forest around the two, and a hidden mystical energy seemed to stretch from his body in around a dozen-meter area around him. Chapter 4, Young Master's Speculation. The teen hadn't walked long when he found a small outcropping in the forest. In this small area of grass, the trees opened up to let a little bit of sunlight through, revealing a small encampment of 4 tents. Young Master, why are you back so soon? As soon as the teen entered the encampment, a middle-aged man walked up to him, holding a stoic bearing. He spoke out with a confused expression. He wore light leather armor with a runic engraving across the chest area, and in his right hand he wields a spear. Upon this spear's shaft lied more runic engravings that traveled from top to bottom. Apart from this man, there were only 2 others in this encampment, both of which wore more casual clothing and sat around a fire cooking something in a metal pot that laid in the center of the encampment. Haha, I found a little kitten and couldn't bear to leave her out there to die. So I've come back to give her some grub. How she got here I don't know, but for some reason she had attracted the attention of a hell monkey who attacked her. The young teen replied, and it was only at this point did the spear-wielding man notice the bundle of fur in his young master's hands. A hell monkey. They are known for only killing magical beasts. Exactly. Methinks this little lass may be a magic beast. What? But it looks just like a normal house cat. The soldier scratched his head doubtfully. There are many magical beasts who are very weak in its litter days. This little one must have lost her parents. Though I can only ponder. Jonathan shrugged. I've never seen or heard of a magical beast who takes on the shape of a cat. There are beasts like the hellcat and the jade-winged cat who are close in looks, but there are usually some levels of alterations. This little one looks no different from a normal cat. Strange, strange. We'll take her back and have the family's beast tamer magician have a look at her. Maybe he can identify her species. Do you plan on taming her for yourself, young master? Though I doubt she can grow further than the minor stage of a magical beast. We'll see if she can in time. For the question of taming her, I'm thinking of giving her to my little sister. If she is indeed a magical beast, it can help protect her when she goes to the academy in 2 years. We'll have to see if the cat is a magical beast first though. Indeed. Either way, magical beast or kitten. My little sister will like her as a gift. She goes crazy for small and cute animals. Ha ha ha. The two continue with casual conversation for a little longer before the two say their goodbyes. While the stoic man with the spear returns to his watch-out duty, the teen walks further into the encampment. At this point he feels a slight movement in his arms as the little silver kitten lazily raises its head. 8. Food. This is her first thought upon awakening from her short slumber as she immediately notices the smell of the food wafting through the air. Hunger has hit the poor little thing badly now and she is desperate to dig in. Needing a way to message this to the teen, she begins to stretch out her left paw in the direction of the pot, which she has guessed to be the source of the food. Ha ha ha. You're an intelligent one, you hungry little lass. The teen was greatly amused by the human-like actions of the kitten while the silver kitten was quick to nod her head furiously in response. This kitten's intelligence seems to be quite high. Almost as if it can understand my words. That would definitely make her a magical beast if this is true, a unique one at that. Let's get her settled before I investigate any further. The teen secretly mused as he brought the little kitten in his hand towards the boiling pot of food. The two men who were cooking the food were quick to greet him while he leaned down to sit cross-legged on the grass near the pot of food. The teen and kitten pair could now feel the pleasant warmth of the fire at a safe distance. No longer as sleepy after her short nap, the little kitten stretches herself before sitting up, her small delicate front paws sitting herself up upon the teen's crossed legs. Her tongue licks the side of her lips as she smells the sweet fragrance of the boiling food and she looks on intoxicated. Growing impatient, she once again motions for the humans to give her food, which amuses the teen once again as he lets out a pleasant-sounding laugh. Servants, pour the two of us a bowl of soup. The rest of the party will be back any second now, anyway. No need to wait. Yes, young master. With that, the two servants grabbed a bowl and ladle each, filling the bowls up to the brim with the soup that's been cooked in the metal pot. While one servant placed a bowl of soup in the teen's hand, the other placed a bowl on the grassy floor, allowing easy access for the kitten. Without delay, the little kitten leaps off from the teen's embrace and darts to the bowl of pleasant-smelling food. She quickly begins to lick and chew the contents of the soup, which consists mainly of a few meats and various vegetables in a seasoned broth. Simple in taste but well above what one would usually expect in a small encampment such as this one. Young master, is this a? Only now did one of the two servants speak up. A look of confusion had lingered on their faces when they had witnessed the somewhat abnormal intelligence this kitten conveyed when it motioned for food earlier. Yes, I believe this kitten is a magical beast. But we'll have to test her first, let her finish eating and we'll see if she can use magic. Magic? Magical beast. Hearing these words, the little kitten's two pointed ears perked up. When I came into this world, did I become a magical beast? Is that why I can run fast and see far? Is that mysterious energy that I feel magic? That would make sense, wouldn't it? The little kitten felt very excited about this. From her limited knowledge, magic didn't exist in her old world, but it was an extraordinary concept that would allow people to do amazing things. It was strange, it was like her memories of her old world were perfect and she could remember things with a thought. With just a look back through her memories, she remembered all the info she had overheard that pertains to the word magic and gained some understanding of the concept. If magic exists in this world, what amazing things could I do? Maybe I could be like the birds and fly, or maybe she could make it so she can never touch water ever again. Oh, how she loathed the feeling of water on her beautiful fur. So was that icicle that killed that monkey beast and the disappearance of its body. Was that this boy's magic? She didn't linger on these thoughts long before her stomach began to growl in hunger once more. Oh well, these questions can be answered later. Right now, I'm desperate for more food. Chapter 5, Little Kitten is a Magical Beast. Hearing the footsteps of many people, the little silver kitten turned her delicate head to find several men walking into the encampment, being welcomed by the spear-wielding man from before. In front of this new group of people was a large bald man with a warm but stoic expression. He had a noble bearing and his steps seemed to hold a large weight to them. Behind this man were 5 others. All wore identical armor to the spear-wielding man, except they all wielded longbows in their hands. Also of note were rather large sabers that laid by their waist, hung by a leather belt. Welcome back, Uncle, the teen was quick to rise to his feet and greet his uncle, the large bald-headed gentleman. Haha, why are you back so early, little nephew? Did you get your ass beat up? The bald man laughed aloud, his lips raised in a taunting and childlike grin. Ha ha ha. No, it's like this, uncle. While I was out hunting magical beasts for my solo training, I came across this little lass being attacked by a hell monkey. As he says this, the teen gestures towards the little silver kitten by his side, drawing the attention of his uncle and the other men towards her. At this point in time, the little kitten has turned away from her food to also study these new people. She is feeling somewhat nervous, hoping they won't kick her out from the camp. She really wouldn't know what to do in this forest of hellish creatures on her own. Seeing this little oddity, the uncle held a confused expression. Oh, a cat. What's a cat doing in the middle of Red Winter Forest? What's more fascinating, uncle, is that she was attacked by a hell monkey. Oh, indeed. Does that mean this little thing is? Well, I don't know yet. I just had her fed and was going to check her just now to see if she is indeed a magical beast. The uncle nods his head in approval, so the teen turns his attention to the little kitten by his side, whose head is tilted in a confused expression. Little lass. Let's start this off simple. Do you understand what we are saying? Nod your head if you can. The little kitten doesn't immediately respond, she simply stares into the teen's eye as if judging how she should respond. Meanwhile, the surrounding men turn to face their young master with a confused expression at his attempts to talk to this seemingly normal-looking cat. Should I respond? Would it be dangerous? I don't know anything about this world. But I really can't see this person as a bad guy. Welp, there's no gain with no risk. I've always had a straightforward attitude, why change now? A grin seems to appear on the little kitten's face with these thoughts, and after the few seconds it took to think this far, she then slowly nodded in her response to the teen's question. This causes the teen to put on a wide smile while the other people held expressions of awe. For an animal to have this amount of intelligence would put the beast beyond the ranking of a minor magical beast. It was hard to believe that this unassuming little kitten held the intelligence to understand them. Some started to believe it was just a coincidence that the cat had just nodded at the right time. Seeing the doubting eyes around him, the uncle stepped up to speak. Let's see. Bite the closest person to you. Hearing this strange request, the little kitten couldn't help but blink her eyes a few times. As the one closest to the kitten, the teen was shocked when he heard his uncle speak up, not knowing whether to laugh or cry in response. After a second of contemplation, the little kitten seemed to shrug its shoulder and then leaped forward at the teen to take a bite at the exposed flesh of his ankle. Being just a normal cat bite, the teen didn't get hurt too bad, but he still felt indignation in his heart. You damned uncle. There was 1,000 other ways to test her, you old git. Is that how you talk to your superior? Tch. The teen could only sulk while the other people began to let out loud laughs. These two family members have always been known for their pranking ways, always trying to get one over the other. They couldn't wait to see what their young master would come up with in response. And indeed, the teen was already cursing in thought while concocting ways to get back at his moronic uncle. All right, enough of that. Ha ha ha. Then little kitten, I'll ask you straight up. Are you a magical beast? The little kitten was still for a second as she resumed a sitting posture, then she visually shrugged her shoulders in response. Can it be you don't know? Hearing the teen's question, the little kitten nodded. How strange. Well, can you use magic? To this query, the little kitten proceeded to stand up and then crouched to the grassy floor. She felt that familiar but mysterious energy fluctuate around her four paws, empowering her strength, and then she leaped high into the air. She jumped around 2 stories high into the air before landing back on the ground with a thump. The ground beneath her seemed to crack a little where her paws landed. That's magic. Uncle, what was the strength of her aura? It was the power of a mid-level minor-ranking magical beast. Which is odd considering she already has the intelligence gained when a magical beast breaks through to the major rank of magical beasts, or higher for that matter. We'll just have to have Sir German have a look at her. Yeah, this will need the work a beast tamer. I believe he also has a beast communicator on him at the moment, which means we'll be able to directly talk with her at that time as well. The little kitten's eyes lit up when she heard this. She could communicate with them. This would be a great help in understanding this new world and her powers. She really wants to learn how to use magic. How wonderful that would be. She couldn't help but get excited. Now then, little nephew, what do you plan to do with her? She's a little weak to tame her for yourself. I was thinking of gifting her to my little sister. Good idea. She'll be attending Raven Academy in 2 years. By that time we can teach the little thing some magic. She can be used to protect my little niece from danger. Little lass, would you like to join us and become a tamed beast? You probably don't understand what that means, right? The little silver kitten nods in response. Though she can understand that becoming a tamed beast would be essentially becoming their pet, she doesn't understand the difference from pet and tamed beast, so she would like to understand more before accepting this proposal. All right, let me explain. To become a tamed beast requires the human and the magical beast to make a contract. There are 2 types of contracts. The first and most used contract is called the human superior contract. In this contract, the human is the master while the beast is the slave. Most beast tamers will battle a beast and suppress them until they are forced into this contract. In this contract, the beast cannot harm their master or go against their orders. They are fully at the will of their master, no matter what abuse they put them through. The little kitten's small mouth couldn't help but gape and she began to furiously shake her head. She will never agree to this contract. Ha ha ha. Don't worry, little lass, I'm not too fond of this type of contract either. We'll be offering you the second type of contract. The little kitten calmed down a little, but she was still quite apprehensive after hearing how horrible the first contract could be. The second contract is called the equality contract. With this contract, the beast and human are on equal footing. In this contract, if you harm your partner, you will be damaged as well. This prevents the human from abusing the beast, and of course the other way around as well. To break this contract requires both parties' agreement though. This is to prevent betrayals. The biggest drawback to this contract, and why it is less used, is that when one of the 2 of you die, the other party will suffer a great amount of damage. While it won't kill them, it will hurt them a great deal and you will require a long while to recover. I should also say, my little sister is just 4 years old and is a very nice girl. She'll definitely treat you well. So, will you agree to become her tamed beast? The little kitten went into deep thought. Seeing this, the teen could only sigh. It was a life-deciding choice, so of course it wouldn't be easy to decide. At this point the uncle chose this time to put in a word. How about this, lass? Why don't you follow us for now? We'll introduce you to my little niece and also have a person called Sir German to have a look at you. With his help and the use of a beast communicator, we can have a proper conversation then. How about this? This deal was very tempting for the little kitten and she was quick to nod her head, to the glee of the duo. Good, then I think it's time to introduce ourselves for that matter. I am the eldest son of the Wilderwolf family's main branch, Jonathan. And I am this little rat's uncle, brother to his father, Uncle Kill Wilderwolf. These people are our personal soldiers and servants. You'll get to know them personally as we travel together. The little kitten nodded her understanding before pondering on the conversation and her newly gained knowledge. A world of magic. This is going to be interesting. And, to become a tamed beast. While it takes away my freedom, it would be a lot safer and my master would just be a young girl. Sigh. It's all too much, I'll need to ponder on this. Let's meet this young mistress of the Wilderwolf family first, I'll decide on this matter then. Chapter 6, 1 week. Now then, little kitten. Do you have a name? In response to Jonathan's question, the little kitten responded by shaking her petite head. She had been given some names in her past life from the many people she had met and befriended for food. But she didn't really like those names, considering some of those names were Ginger, Fluffy and even Furball. So she was quick to decide to just say she didn't have a name. In that case, we'll let my little sister bestow a name upon you if you become her beast. Is that okay? The little kitten nods in response. She is really curious about this little sister of her savior, especially considering that they may be partners in the future. If she's as nice as these two fools say she is, then it might not be too bad. Cats are creatures of solitude due to their primal instincts, and she was like all the other cats in the past. But with her newfound intelligence came traits found in humans. With her near photographic memory of her old world, she could remember the many people playing with each other in her old world and couldn't help but feel jealous at this moment. It looked like such good fun. Maybe this little sister could be her first friend. 1 week has passed since the little kitten has joined up with the Wilderwolf family. Through her time with them, she has learned some things about why these people are in this hellish forest. It mainly had to do with the young master of the Wilderwolf family, Jonathan. In their family, when someone reaches 16 years of age, they will be sent out with the task of adventuring for a full year, not to return until the year has passed. The Wilderwolf family are famous for their powerful magicians, especially in the fields of adventurers and military men. The head of the family, Jonathan's father and Kill's brother, is the left-hand man of the king. This gave him the control of the main army of the kingdom. The Wilderwolf family also have their own private army as well, of which the 6 soldiers in this party hail from. It has been a little more than half a year since Jonathan's departure, and they have been in this forest for a few weeks now. Each day they will move forward and camp the night. In the morning, they will hunt magical beasts for training and then travel, fighting any magical beasts they encounter on the way. During this time, due to the danger involved, the little kitten has spent most of her time at the encampments they set up. Most of these beasts could kill her in a matter of seconds, so she hasn't had the chance to see many beasts. But she has seen beasts attack the encampment during the night. The night before, a group of 6 wolf-like creatures had attacked. Each one of them was the height of an adult male, and their eyes glowed a menacing red in the night. Their white fur glistened in the moonlight, and their speed transcended most of the soldiers, forcing Jonathan and Kill to take up most of the fighting as the 2 strongest figures in the party. In this world, magicians and magical beasts will make breakthroughs in their magic to become stronger. With each new stage they transcend, gaining them more access to what is called aura. This aura is the mysterious energy the little kitten has been feeling when she ran faster than a cheetah and leaped 2 stories in the air. All magic consumes this energy, so the more you have the stronger the spells you can use are. However, to make a breakthrough in your magic needs a lot of talent and a lot of time. Jonathan is a genius magician apparently, though the little kitten finds it hard to believe given his carefree attitude. He is at a rank called Inner Haven rank, and at the peak of it, all he needs is a little more time and he'll transcend that ranking. Meanwhile, Uncle Kill is at the rank above that, the spirit rank. The little kitten found it hard to digest all this information that Jonathan would spout at her whenever he was bored. Oh, and by the way, if you were wondering, those wolves were easily beaten by the powerful duo, amazing the little kitten at how swiftly they dealt with the wolves. The 2 seemed to chant in foreign tongue in unison, and when they finished, the 2 had summoned icicles in the air that then shot out and pierced the wolves. The icicles pierced them in critical areas, and their souls quickly left this mortal coil. This reminded the kitten of how the hell monkey had died and realized that this was probably the same spell Jonathan had used at that time. It was truly a deadly move. After having 1 week pass, she had been told that they are nearing the northern edge of what is called the Red Winter Forest. When the group reaches the end, they will find rest in the closest city of Evergale and sell off their winnings. They'll stay for a while and make plans for the future. It seems that they've still got to adventure for another few months before Jonathan can return home, so the little kitten will be joining them in that time. With nothing else to do for the last week, the little kitten chose to study her own body and her newfound powers. On the first night, the first thing she did was test her improved sight. She wanted to test if it also improved her night vision. And to her amazement it did. Then, in between eating, drinking, and getting lectures about the Winterwolf family from Jonathan, she began to test the limits of her strength. She began this little study of hers by gathering aura in her little claws and slashing at the nearby trees. She found that she was able to cut halfway through the trees, enough for one of them to snap and collapse. And to her horror, the tree had fell in her direction, and the poor little kitten nearly saw her life flash before her eyes at that moment. Fortunately, Jonathan was nearby to catch the tree with ease with his magically improved muscular arm. Unfortunately, Jonathan wouldn't stop teasing the little kitten the rest of the day for her stupidity afterwards, which she could only clench her teeth and try to ignore. She had to admit that she had been a little empty-headed. Every day, the little kitten would use her powers and strike boulders, causing them to crack and break. She leaped to her furthest height and found herself just slightly above these several-story-high trees. And it was on the 7th day, when this week was coming to an end, that Jonathan had came over and begun a conversation. "Little lass, I've been watching you test out your magic. Now that you've tested it, it is time for me teach you on how to improve your magic. Actually, first things first, we should have you find out what elements you align to." The little kitten's ears perked up at this. Elements? Does that mean things like fire and water? Ah, were those icicles a part of these elements? You ready to begin? The little kitten furiously nods. She has to improve her power. She remembers how Uncle Kill had said she was at the middle stage of minor magical beast ranking and how she was too weak to be Jonathan's tamed beast. How insulting. She had to get strong and show this childish duo how talented and powerful she can be. She also remembered the incident with the hell monkey. She never wanted to feel that useless and weak ever again. "Chmpth. Let's do this." She meows aloud. Once again forgetting her inability to speak. Hearing her eagerness, Jonathan let out a laugh. "That's the spirit. If you improve your strength enough, maybe one day you can return the favor on that hell monkey. Well, it would have to be another hell monkey as that one is dead. But you get the point." Meow. Chapter 7, Little Kitten's Elemental Alignment, 1. Now let me explain. All magicians have elemental threads in their subconscious. When using spells of an elemental nature, we draw power from these threads to use this power. These threads feed off our aura, so the more aura a magician has, the stronger their elemental power will grow with them. Every magician has the 4 basic elements of air, water, fire, and earth. Do you understand so far? Meow. Good. Alright then, beyond the main elements are rare elements, which are rarer for a magician to have. And then beyond a rare element are holy elements. Holy elements are only seen once a century, they are rarer than rare, and currently there are only a handful of people alive who have holy elements. An example of a rare element is ice, which both me and Uncle Kill have. Element alignment is somewhat hereditary, though there are exceptions. In the Wilderwolf family, all of us have inherited the element of ice. We're famous for it. However, being the genius that I am, I actually have a second element. That of lightning. Jonathan proclaims smugly, making the little kitten roll her eyes in response. Cough cough anyway, a large majority of magic, especially martial spells, use the power of elements to fuel it. The icicle rain spell that you saw us use on the wolf pack is an example of ice magic. But it also uses the power of wind, with the wind element, that allowed us to keep those icicles afloat and then shoot those icicles into the enemy. Now you know how important the elements are to magic. Meow. Now, to check your elements you need to enter a meditative state. With your eyes closed and after concentrating your thoughts, you will find that you will be able to see the inner workings of your body and the source of all aura in people and beasts alike, the Haven organ. When you concentrate your sight on this Haven organ, you will come to find your sight begin to blur and enter a world of darkness. In the future, if you ever reach the stage of a minor transcended beast, this is where you will create your inner haven, meaning you would join the same equivalent ranking as me. But enough of that, all of that is way too far advanced for you right now. Before I go any further then, I would like you to attempt to enter this meditative stance and enter your Haven organ. You think you can try this? It could take you quite a while, might not be able to do it until tomorrow even. The little kitten nods. Okay then, when you think you've completed this task just meow. You'll still be able to hear my voice in this state, so when you finish, continue to meditate so I can pass on the next instructions. The little kitten nods again before letting out a long breath. Exhaling slowly. She then closes her eyes and attempts to empty her mind of all thoughts. Oh, I can feel my aura so clearly now. The little kitten's ears perk up. If she had her eyes open right now they would be wide-eyed in astonishment. In this meditative state, The little kitten could somehow see the mystical aura that fuels all magic fluctuating around her. It was of a smoky color with a tint of an azure glow. It flowed like smoke as well, drifting from her mortal body. Concentrating her sight into her body, she could see every vein, every muscle, every organ beating away, until her sight concentrated on an area in her waist. At her waist, she could see a circular organ that seemed to be the source of all her aura as it radiated outwards in great amounts. So all I have to do now is look into this haven organ. And with no hesitation, she swept her gaze into the organ to find herself into a deep sea of darkness. It felt like a world of nothingness, with no light to be seen. She instantly knew that this was the area that Jonathan had described. Meow. Oh, that was quick. Only 2 hours. Jonathan praised. Meow. Ha ha ha. It only felt like seconds for you, I? When magicians meditate, time will pass outside at a much faster rate. It will take some time to get used to this, and because of this, we usually have other people watch other beginner magicians as they meditate in case they lose track of time and to protect them from dangers. Now that your subconscious eye, which is what we call the ability that allows magicians to see in their meditative state, is now in your haven organ, it is time for you to see your elements. Meow. Excited, I? Ha ha ha. Now then, let's begin. This could also take some time, but considering how quickly you were able to enter your haven organ, I believe you have a high level of insight, unless you were just lucky, that is. Okay, one of the most important factors for a magician is their imagination. Most spells require the magician's mind to imagine not only the shape and feel of the magic they're producing, but also the laws behind the spell and even the chant that is required to produce the spell. This might sound difficult, but given enough time, you can even learn a spell so well that you can produce the spell without the need to chant. Though that is very difficult. You following me so far, little lass? Meow. Wow. This sounds a lot more difficult than I thought. So, basically, there are 3 factors for producing a spell. The first is to imagine the physical properties of the finished spell. The second is to imagine the laws behind the spell, such as its cause and effect, I guess. And lastly, I will also have to memorize and imagine the chant to the spell, not only out loud, but also in my head as letters. The little kitten could only sigh. This stuff was still far ahead of her for now. Okay then. What I want you to do now is to imagine that in the world of darkness that you are currently seeing, there are several threads floating about. You don't know how many, but there are at least 4. Just imagine it and eventually, it'll be. Tell me when you see these threads. Meow. With that response, the little kitten concentrated on her next mission. She tried her best to imagine these threads, but 2 hours passed and she still struggled to see these imagined threads. Why can't I imagine these threads? It's like my imagination is too blurry and can't make anything out properly. Ah, what if? With a new idea, she searched her memories. Her idea was to shape her imagination of a thread from her memory instead of just conjuring a wholly imagined series of threads. Finally, she remembered that one time a kind child had once given her a cat toy that consisted of several threads intertwined in a ball. She also remembered how she had fun unraveling that thread until finally you could not call the toy a ball any longer. With the help of this memory, she once again tried to imagine these threads in this world of darkness, all the while relating them to her memories. Meow. I see it, wow. Haha. You see the threads? Okay, memorize the size and width of these threads, the amount and also their colors. This will all be important in judging your elemental alignment. When you are done, you can open your eyes. Meow, the little kitten happily mewed. After several seconds, the little kitten opened her eyes, a layer of excitement in her greenish-red eyes. Now then, time to find out your elemental alignment, Jonathan declared with a smile. Chapter 8, Little Kitten's Elemental Alignment, 2. Okay, first off, let me set up a few things first. Follow me over here. Jonathan walked off and the little kitten followed after. They didn't walk long before Jonathan plopped himself down in an area where there was much less grass and the ground beneath was soft light brown dirt. The little kitten sat across from Jonathan while he picked up a thin stick. Now then, I want to know if you can read. The little kitten shook her head. She had seen many things in her memories, But learning to read was not one of them, as one could imagine. I'll use drawings then. And with that, Jonathan knelt forward and pressed the stick into the soft dirt and began drawing shapes. The first of which was a mountain, the second a swirl, the third a fire and the last a wave. Ah, the four main elements. The kitten's eyes lit up in understanding. As you can guess, these are the four main elements. But enough of that for now. I want to know how many elements you have. Don't be disappointed if you don't have a rare element. The four main elements can be just as deadly and powerful as the rarer elements if you gain enough insights into them. Okay, nod if you have more than the four main element. The little kitten nods furiously, her excitement clear on her petite feline face. Haha. Great, now is it just one rare element? The little kitten once again nods. That's fine. Let's see, how can you tell me what color it was? 8. How about you point at something that is the same color? Can you do that? The little kitten nods and then studies her surroundings, searching for something that matched the color of the fifth thread she had seen in that world of darkness. Suddenly her eyes light up and she scoots over towards Jonathan before pointing at his waist area. Jonathan looks down to see her pointing at the center of his belt. This belt is dark brown with a silver medallion at the center. On the medallion is a wolf head, a symbol of the Wilderwolf family. Oh, is it silver? Meow. The little kitten nods her head to symbolize that he was correct. Silver, huh. That would mean the element of metal. The little kitten tilts her head in confusion. Haha. Don't underestimate the power of metal. With this element you can summon 100 swords to battle or create invincible armor to protect yourself. You can also control your enemy's armor, if the opponent is weak enough to let you. Metal is in no way weaker to the other rare elements. Let me tell you this, in the history of this continent, the most revered figures were the 4 holy magicians. These 4 magicians were able to save all the current kingdoms from a powerful empire, and each of these 4 magicians had rare elements. One magician was aligned to the holy element of light, another had the holy element of time, another had the rare element of magma and lightning, while the final magician only held the rare element of wood. These magicians were said to be at the highest level of power possible on this continent, with none of the 4 holy saints being that much stronger than the others. The little kitten's mouth dropped at this. She couldn't understand how something like wood could match these other elements in power at all. Hee. I don't blame you for being shocked by this. Remember this, having a rare element is definitely an advantage, especially if you have a holy element. However, having a powerful elemental power is useless if your insight into that element is pitiful. The holy magician with the element of wood was powerful because of his high level of insight. He created hundreds of spells for the 4 main elements and the element of wood as well as non-elemental spells. He is sometimes referred to as the father of spells, for he was the creator of many of the spells still used to this day. Always remember this, magicians should never rely on one power and should always study. There is no end of the path in the fields of magic, there is always room for improvement and always new things to learn. The little kitten now understood. She was truly shocked at this flurry of new information and was constantly reminding herself to memorize these words. Having finished what he wanted to say, Jonathan knelt forward once more to draw a 5th picture in the dirt. This picture was of a sword. Now then, this next part is simple. The thicker and longer the threads of each element is, the more affinity for that element you have. Now, I'm gonna ask you to put your paw in front of the drawing that represents your most powerful element. If you have elements that are roughly the same size, point to both of them or more. Got it? Meow. A light then. Now point to the element or elements that are your strongest. The little kitten proceeded to sit up and wandered close to the drawings before placing her dainty little right paw before the sword drawing. That makes sense. It is common for your rare element to be your strongest. Now, point to your next strongest element or elements. This time, the little kitten placed her paw down twice. The drawings she pointed to were the swirl and the fire. Oh, fire and wind. That's a good combo. Fire is also good with the element of metal, allowing you to transform and heat up the metal for more deadly attack. And wind is always a good element to have as it is very good for supporting other magical attacks. There are also several wind elemental spells at higher stages that allow for flight. Flight. I definitely want that. The little kitten's eyes lit up in excitement. Haha, don't get too excited. The first flight magic I know of requires a person to be at the peak of Inner Haven ranking. So for a magical beast, you'll probably have to become a minor transcended beast. That's a long ways away for you. These words dimmed her eyes somewhat, but she also stored away this knowledge for a later date. For her last two elements, they were also roughly at the same level. Finished with this part of the element alignment test, Jonathan proceeded to wipe away the drawings before pulling out several threads of various thicknesses and lengths. They ranged from the thinness of a wire to the thickness of a thin rope. Alright, for this final test, I want you to point at the thread that is roughly the size of the threads in your Haven organ. Let's start with your metal element. The little kitten sat there as if pondering something before walking up to the largest thread, but instead of pointing to it, she placed her paw to the right of it, beyond the rest of the threads. Oh, larger than the biggest thread, huh? That's really good. That puts you roughly around the same size of my threads before I entered the Inner Haven ranking. It's gonna be easy for you to use powerful metal spells. Well, for a minor magical beast anyway. Okay, next, point to a thread for your fire and wind elements. This time, the little kitten pointed to the second to last thread. This caused Jonathan's eyes to open wide for a second before letting out a pleased grin. Good, good. The power of your wind and fire elements is equal to the highest level of your peers. Though don't get complacent, there are plenty of abnormalities out there with even greater affinities to the elements than you. People with two rare elements at the same level of your metal element. Meow. The little kitten exclaimed in shock. Her pride was weakening by the second. However, she understood that Jonathan was just trying to keep her level-headed. Fine then. It wouldn't be fun if everything was too easy, right? I'll definitely become a powerful magical beast. The kitten's eyes narrowed in determination. Haha. I see the burning in your eyes. Good, a strong will and countless training is required for the greatest of magicians. If you had let my words get to you, I would have been greatly disappointed. Okay then, point to the thread that will represent the size of your earth and water affinities. For these final elements, the little kitten pointed to a thread that was just beneath the middle section of the array of threads. Jonathan nodded, content with this. For a magician's least powerful elements to be at this level was rather good. Good. This little lass has a lot of potential. She'll be a great ally for my little sister. Let's just hope she'll agree when the time comes. This kitten had definitely exceeded his expectations. Chapter 9, Cultivation. That night ended with Jonathan telling the little kitten that he'd continue her magic training the next day after his morning hunt. This was fine for her, as she had grown tired at this point. That night she cozied up in her usual tent which she shared with Jonathan. Jonathan and Uncle Kill had their own tents, the advantage of being nobles, while their subordinates share the remaining two tents. It was decided on the first night that she'd sleep in the same tent as Jonathan as she was obviously more familiar with him than anyone else. The little kitten fell into a blissful sleep quickly and awoke to sunshine on her face the next morning, peeking through a gap in the tent's opening. Jonathan had already left, leaving only her in the tent, snuggling comfortably on the sheets. She was still for a long while before finally stretching herself and standing on her four paws. Leaving the tent, she found that only the two servants and one guard was left in the encampment. This meant that Jonathan, Kill and the rest of the Wilderwolf soldiers were still out in their morning hunt. She first walked up to the two servants and they were quick to hand her some meat and bread. By the time she had finished her meal, the hunting group had all returned with excited expressions. She was surprised to see a rather impressively sized furry beast with 4 bulky arms and 1 bulging eye being dragged by Uncle Kill, who was laughing loudly as he presents it to the people who were left behind in the encampment. Ha ha ha. Do you know what this is? Uncle Kill roared loudly in his laughter. It's the one-eyed ape. A servant exclaimed, his eyes open wide in gleeful surprise. Whoa. That's a very powerful minor transcended beast. The guard said, his eyes shining in awe. Don't act all smug, uncle. If it hadn't been for your last sneak attack, it would have been my kill. Jonathan meanwhile, said with a pout. Nice try, foolish nephew, but it's not your time to outshadow me just yet. Ha ha ha. TCH. Just wait till I make my breakthrough. Meow. The little kitten greeted the two, rolling her eyes at their usual antics. Though she acts like this, she has grown quite attached to these two, finding the two somewhat agreeable. Hey, little lass. Let us have our morning meal and then I'll move on to your next lesson, 'kay? Jonathan patted her head with a smile. Meow. The little kitten replied with enthusiasm. Good, haha. A good while later, Jonathan finished his meal and the duo, him and the little kitten, separated from the group a little to get away from their chatter, and Jonathan began his next lesson. All right then, little lass. You are currently at the first rank for magical beasts, which is called the minor magical beast rank. To be more precise, you are at the middle stage of that rank. To become stronger and eventually proceed to the second rank of major, you will first have to make a breakthrough to the last stage of minor rank. To do this requires you to gather the aura created from your Haven organ and direct it towards your soul. Your soul is located near your heart and is generally invisible to the naked eye. However, using your subconscious eye, one can see it, much like how it allows you to see your aura. The strength of your soul determines one's ranking. By directing your aura into your soul, you're effectively feeding it until it becomes full. When it becomes full, after a long time of concentration and effort, one can force the soul to evolve. This is a process we like to call cultivation. This evolved soul will increase the stage or ranking of a magician or magical beast. When you increase a stage, one will experience an increase in aura or other profound effects. This is especially true for when one increases in ranking. When you increase in rank, you will gain more than double the amount of aura you usually do when you evolve stages. From a minor beast to a major beast, for example, not only will you gain around x3 more aura, a magical beast like yourself will also gain basic intelligence and will gain a power called bestial fury. This power will activate in the form of a roar that can frighten and damage a being of lesser power. Exhale. That was a mouthful, but do you understand, little lass? Meow. Good. It's also good to know that another way to make a breakthrough is when a magician or magical beast is in a life or death scenario. It is rare, but a person's body can go into overdrive and start producing a dangerous amount of aura and direct it into their soul. This is very dangerous and can damage your Haven organ. And without your Haven organ, there is no aura, and with no aura, there is no more magic. So do not attempt this unless you are in great danger and you have no other options. Got that? Meow. The little kitten nods furiously in response. I ain't risking losing my life. Are you crazy? Me. This cat ain't no fool. Hihi, that's good. There have been a lot of idiots in the past who have crippled their Haven organ in the past by forcing this method. It rarely works out well. Okay then, from now on, as much as possible I want you to meditate and attempt your first breakthrough. When you attempt to break through to the late stage of minor rank, things will come naturally to you, though it may take a long time. There isn't a way to speed up a breakthrough unless with the help of rare and expensive items, but they can also have negative effects, so it's always better to proceed naturally for the most part. Got that? Meow. Good. Do as I've instructed, and when we leave this forest and enter a city, I'll search for some beginner spells for you to learn. Meow, meow. Excited, aye? Ha ha ha. You better get to work then. The good spells begin at the late stage of minor rank and beyond. Meow. Chapter 10, Departure from Red Winter Forest. Jonathan soon left, joining his uncle as they began packing up and preparing to head further into the forest. Apparently, they are only a week away from reaching the other side of the forest. After another half-day of walking, they would then arrive at a city called Evergale. Evergale is the biggest city in the eastern regions of this kingdom, the Falcio Kingdom. Now alone, the little kitten once again went into meditation, ready to practice this cultivation technique to make a breakthrough into the late stage of minor rank. She first traveled her subconscious eye towards her chest and quickly found her own soul. It was rather small, no bigger than a pearl, and it glowed a light blue color that was calming to the eyes. It also seemed to pulse, almost like the beatings of a heart. After letting out a redded breath, the little kitten got to work and started to redirect her aura into the soul. It seemed to work quite naturally, and she could faintly feel her soul change as she did this. She could feel her soul becoming more and more concentrated and could see it pulse brighter at an incredibly slow pace. She could tell that this was going to take quite a while for her soul to be ready to evolve and make a breakthrough to the late stage. An hour passed like this, and she only stopped when a familiar voice sounded in her little ears and broke her concentration. "Little lass, it's time to head out." It was naturally Jonathan. "Meow. I'm gonna carry you in my arms, so feel free to continue your cultivation." "K. Meow." Jonathan picked her up and laid her comfortably in his crossed hands, giving her soft fur a few pets every now and then. In this comfort, she was barely distracted as she continued to meditate, her mind constantly at work, fueling her soul with a constant stream of aura. Hours passed before she and the rest of the group suddenly heard a loud growl from afar. "That's a powerful roar. Most likely a transcended beast. Jonathan, join me. Everyone else, stay back." Uncle Kill immediately responded. His 4 limbs were in a martial pose in a flash. "Sorry, little lass, you're gonna have to part with this young master for a little." Jonathan stuck his tongue out before placing her in the hands of one of the Wilderwolf soldiers. With quick steps, the uncle and nephew duo vanished in a great leap as they headed in the direction of the loud roar. At the same time, the little kitten could hear loud footsteps bellow closer and closer in their direction. Eventually these two forces clashed and she could feel an intense wind streak pass her fur as a loud thunderous boom was emitted in the direction of the clash. "Everyone, retreat backwards. Their magic is so powerful it can hurt us even at this distance." One of the soldiers barked, sweat rolling down his face as a look of anxiety hit him. Minor transcended beasts are powerful beasts, even for a magician of the spirit rank like Uncle Kill. "Meow." Seeing the worrying looks around her, the little kitten looked on anxiously as the surrounding men retreated by around a dozen feet. Meanwhile, in the darkness of the forest ahead, clashing sounds could be heard and the flashing of sparks could be seen. Minutes passed until finally they could hear a loud, pitiful howl, the sound of death. The faces of all the men brightened immediately. "Haha. They got it, we'll get some good spoils from this one. Is this our second minor transcended beast then?" Sigh. It only took them less than 5 minutes. Those two really are world-class magicians. Yeah, young master is only 16, yet he's already at the peak of Inner Haven rank. I heard he's also closing in on his breakthrough. What? If he becomes a spirit rank soon? That's gotta be close to the record in Falsio. The little kitten was amazed at what she heard. These bumbling morons were that amazing? I mean, I knew they were powerful. But, to think they are that well regarded. It seems I have hit the jackpot by having these people be the first people I encountered in this world. Ha ha ha. Look at this, boys. Uncle Kill's cackle roared aloud as he came sauntering back to the group dragging a large carcass behind him. The beast was double, no triple the size of a person. It had brown and black fur over its whole body, it had large claws on its bottom feet, but even larger claws on its upper feet. Its teeth were so large, they spilled out from its mouth, showing off its fearsome fangs that, even while dead, gave off a fearsome presence. That's a dark fang beast. They're one of the most powerful minor ranked transcended beast. Even more powerful than the one-eyed ape. Well done, master, young master. The claws and teeth alone will be worth at least 200 gold each. Even more importantly, the Haven organ will be worth 1,000 gold. Ha 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 ha. Quickly, little nephew, store it in your magic pocket. My one's getting full. Yes, uncle. With that, Jonathan detached a small leather bag that was hanging from his waist and unstrung it. When the little kitten peeked into the bag, all she could see was darkness, an unusual darkness that stayed dark even in the light of the sun. Jonathan then raised his right hand towards the dark fang beast corpse and using magic, lifted it towards the small bag held in his left hand. The little kitten looked on confused. What was this fool doing? But then, the bag seemed to act like one of the most terrifying things she had seen in her previous world. The Hoover. With a powerful suction force, the corpse was dragged towards the bag, and then the corpse started to become distorted as it was dragged into the darkness of the bag. This greatly shocked the little kitten and she squealed in surprise. But when she thought about it, things she had previously wondered about had begun to make sense. She had been wondering where all the beasts they had killed went, as well as the tents when they moved. She hadn't been paying much attention because she had been engrossed in her own experiments and training, but now these questions had been answered. Ha 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 ha. The look on your face, little lass. It's priceless. Jonathan's laugh interrupted her thoughts, and she realized her mouth had been hanging wide open the whole time. She clenched her teeth hard, glaring at Jonathan with distaste. But how could the glare of a cute little kitten shut Jonathan up? He just laughed louder, and even Uncle Kill and some others joined in to her annoyance. Ha ha ha. Okay, that's enough. We should continue on. Here, return her. I can't get enough of her soft fur. Jonathan relented. Ah, he is a pervert. The little kitten was passed over and she was now back in Jonathan's hands. However, she was now on guard. If he attempts anything with me, I'll claw his face off. Me. Ha ha ha. What are you thinking, little lass? Don't worry, I ain't into bestiality. Ha ha ha. Meow. And I ain't into. What's the word for being interested in human? Well, whatever, it's not like he can understand me. The kitten's eyes suddenly turned solemn. I can't wait for half a year passes and they give me this communicator thing they've been talking about. I'll finally be able to talk to humans. Then I'll show you who's the boss. Chimph. Days passed in relative peace. All the while, the little kitten continued the cultivation of her magic, growing ever closer to her breakthrough. The uncle and nephew duo continued to slay more and more of the magical beasts of this forest. They even slayed another minor transcended beast. But finally, after another week had passed, they had finally reached the edge of the forest. That's the end of the forest, master, young master. The excited voice of one of the wilder wolf soldiers rang out. Ah, so it is. Little nephew, what city are we going to again? Uncle Kill turned to Jonathan and asked. Ah, you've got as terrible a memory as always, uncle. Jonathan quipped. Shut it, punk. Let's see how good your memory is when you reach my age. Now what city is it? Uncle Kill grumbled. Ha ha. We're going to Evergale, uncle. And by the time I'm your age, I'll definitely go beyond spirit rank and gain a reformed body like my father. Jonathan's held absolute confidence and determination. You're gonna have to work hard, kid. I've been stuck at spirit rank for decades and I was also praised as a genius as a kid. You're gonna need a lot of talent and a lot of luck. Got that, kid? Uncle Kill suddenly turned serious, speaking wise words that were unlike him. Yes, uncle. Jonathan answered confidently. He knew the path ahead was not as simple and certain as his previous words made it out to be. Enough of this, we've gotten off track. All right, men, let's depart from Red Winter Forest. We're off to Evergale City. Uncle Kill swung his sleeves and continued to walk forwards, the end of the forest in his sight. Chapter 11, Entry into Evergale City. When she laid eyes on Evergale City, the little kitten couldn't prevent her eyes from growing wide in shock. It was huge. It had to be several miles wide, with towering metallic walls that were a dark violet in color. This violet was so dark, one had to concentrate to see the violet shimmer of the metal. At each corner of the walls were 4 grand towers, where several guards watched over the surrounding lands. At each of the 4 gates of the city were 2 more towers at each side of the gates, though these towers were a little smaller in size. The buildings in the city were all made from red-colored stone. Most buildings were 1 or 2 stories high, but in several areas of the city were massive-sized buildings, the biggest of which lied at the northernmost area of the city. Jonathan explained to the little kitten that this giant building was the Evergale Palace. This was the home of the city governor and was created from the same metal of the walls and was shaped like an old medieval castle, though a very grand version of one that stood around 200 meters tall. Exiting from Red Winter Forest, the Wilder Wolf party headed towards the eastern gate to enter. Approaching the gate, the little kitten could see several other people also lining up to enter, reaching in the hundreds. So this is a major city of the Falsio Kingdom. Makes me wonder how big Falsio is. Is this grand size normal? I mean, these people's technology is ancient compared to my home world. But I guess with the help of magic, they can create cities just as grand as some of the cities there. Though I can't compare much. As a street cat, My knowledge of my home world is very limited. Who knows how big the city I lived in was compared to others? Really, I never left the street that I lived on for that matter. The hustle and bustle of the surrounding people woke her up from her thoughts as Jonathan and the rest had entered their ranks. Actually, it would be safe to say they had just walked by their ranks and were heading straight to the gates to the little kitten's confusion. Meow. Ah. You wondering why we're cutting the line? Hehe, that's the advantage of being a magician, little lass. The Falsio Kingdom highly treasures magicians, especially powerful ones, and they will naturally give us magicians several advantages. Any magician of Inner Haven rank or above can enter any city, not only immediately, but also free of charge. Though there are a few cities which are an exception to that rule. But Evergale isn't one of them. With her question answered, the little kitten returned her concentration to her cultivation. She felt she was getting really close to her bottleneck, and when she reached that point, a breakthrough would be near. According to Jonathan, the better spells become available at the late stage of minor rank for us magical beasts. At that point, I too can fight other magical beasts and magicians, though of a low level. As the little kitten meditated, her aura surging forth into her soul, Jonathan and the rest of the party walked up to the gate where they were greeted by one of the many guards. To prove their magical ranks, Uncle Kill had to place one of his hands upon a strange device. It was a black spherical glass object that sat upon a white pillar. The pillar was warped at the top and resembled a demonic-like hand that wrapped around the black sphere. Upon touching the sphere, it began to glow an azure glow. The azure glow began to dim, and left behind in the sphere was a simple phrase that the little kitten couldn't read. Meow. This is a black divination pearl. Black divination pearls are a magical item that can test a magician's rank. The words this black pearl just showed were the words for spirit rank naturally. The little kitten now understood. With the identification done, Uncle Kill was able to allow all of them entry. This was another benefit magicians had. Inner Haven magicians could bring in 10 other people free of charge, while spirit rank magicians could bring in 50. Upon entry to the city, the little kitten let her eyes drift across the various buildings and the people. The immediate area around them seemed to be a residential area as far as the eye can see. There were also a few stands littered about, selling wares and food. As they walked through the streets, the little kitten saw various shops the further they walked into the city until they had reached the center area of the city, which was a bustling market. Alright, this is the Evergale market. It's not the biggest in Falsio, but we should be able to get a few good deals. Little nephew, you know me. I detest shopping, so take my bag of holding and sell all our winnings. I'm gonna head off to the northern district to rent an inn. I'll message you when I've settled that. With that, Unlelsey Kill grabbed the bag that sat by his waist and tossed it towards Jonathan, who caught it in a graceful manner. Uncle Kill quickly left with 2 of the soldiers and the 2 servants. He seemed to rush away from the market as if it was his mortal enemy. This left behind Jonathan, the little cat and 4 soldiers. Okay, little lass, I never got to explain to you magic pockets, right? Meow. Thought so. This guy is quite amazing at reading the meanings of my nonsensical meowing. The little kitten couldn't help but secretly muse. Okay, so a magic pocket is quite simple in theory, but very complex in actuality. They are quite expensive, and outside of powerful magicians or rich families, one would find it hard to acquire. This is simply due to the difficulty of making such items. Inside these magic pockets is a small pocket dimension that can vary from the small size of a room to the size of a house. Or there are some magic pockets that reach the level of Evergale Palace. Meow. So big. I must get one. Determination could be seen in her eyes. Don't even think of getting a magic pocket that size, little lass. I believe there might only be a handful available in this kingdom, if that. Now moving on. There are some special bag of holdings, and mine and Uncle Kill's are that. Usually, a person will use an ability where they link their soul to the magic pocket. This makes it so others can't easily enter their magic pocket. This means other people can't access it unless they sever the owner's connection, which would take quite a while, unless that magician is deadly powerful. Me and Uncle Kill's magic pockets are rather special in that they are tied by blood. This makes it so that anyone with the blood of the Wilderwolf family can access the bag of holding, though they still need the permission of the owner. You understand? Meow. Excellent. Now then, time to make some profit. The little kitten could suddenly feel herself shiver as a cold feeling passed by as she stared into Jonathan's eyes, which seemed to hold a gleam of greed present in them. This guy. Why's he getting so excited all of a sudden? Chapter 12, The Howling Paragon. Jonathan passed by all the stalls and various shops until he ended up at a rather large shop called the Howling Paragon. This shop is a world-famous chain of shops all dealing with magical beasts, from the selling of parts to the acquiring of knowledge, from the buying of magical beasts themselves to the buying of items for magical beasts. The inside of the shop was quite wide and there were quite a few people looking at the various wares. At the bottom floor of the shop were magical beast items for the most part, while on the second floor was an information desk area where magicians can acquire knowledge on the whereabouts of certain magical beasts or what their abilities are, among other information. And behind the shop was an open area with several cages that are all magically enforced to keep magical beasts at bay. The little kitten didn't see past the first floor, however, as Jonathan walked straight up to the front desk on the first floor. Behind the front desk was an older gentleman with a bald head. He put off a somewhat proud and elite attitude which was common in a grand business like the Howling Paragon. As soon as Jonathan reached the front desk, the older gentleman put on a fawning smile. It was clear to him that the customer in front of him was from a good family from his noble clothing. "Welcome, sir. How can I help you this fine evening?" the bald man said with his brightest smile. "I'm here to sell my wares first and foremost. My party has acquired quite a lot and some of great worth, so it'd be better for you to bring an appraiser. Follow me to the back area. Our beast tamer is our best appraiser in this humble store. He'll be able to give you fair prices for your wares." Good, good. Show me the way. Come, just follow me." The bald man willingly left the front desk and led Jonathan to the open area at the back of the establishment. Jonathan told the soldiers that they can stay behind and inspect the shop for themselves. Soldiers would preside for themselves for the most part, as only they knew what items would benefit themselves personally in their magic. While the Howling Paragon held items for magical beasts, there were some items which were usable by humans as well. In the back area of the Howling Paragon, the little kitten looked with a conflicted gaze at the several magical beasts captured in cages. There were around 10 of them in total, most at the minor magical beast rank and 2 at the major beast rank. They all had lifeless eyes and were merely waiting for the time to pass. They had long given up on causing trouble, most probably due to the whip the little kitten could see by a certain person's side. This person was the only other person in this area at the moment, and his mere presence would cool the room. He had sharp dagger-like eyes and jagged black hair. He sat cross-legged on the ground in the center of the cages, the whip placed by his side, close enough to be grabbed at any given moment. The whip seemed to be magical as it contained several runes on its ebony handle. "Fair customer, this is our beast tamer, Romer's." The bald man gestured to the man with dagger-like eyes, and that man only nodded slightly for his greeting. "Romer's will appraise your wares if you may be so kind." "Certainly," Jonathan brightly replied, and with vigor, Jonathan proceeded to pull out one beast corpse after the other out of his personal bag of holding until a rather big pile was made, to the astonishment of the 2 employees. Even Romer's icy demeanor seemed to crack as his jaw hanged low in astonishment, though only for a few seconds before recovering. However, this was just the beginning. The 2 were even more shocked when Jonathan pulled out a second bag, Uncle Kill's bag of holding, and began to release even more corpses. In the end, around 50 corpses were laid bare, taking up quite a big amount of space in this back area of the Howling Paragon. By this point, even the little kitten was shocked at the accumulation of beasts that were on show. Only when you pile them up like this can you see how terrifyingly powerful these 2 numbskulls really are. Sigh. Will I ever be able to catch up to them? I can't even make a breakthrough to the late stage of minor rank. The little kitten sighed. Cough, cough. Well, this'll take me a few minutes to sort through all this, Romers said with a wry smile. Several minutes later, the beast tamer Romers had sorted through all the beasts, checking the damage done to them and what important parts remained. Apparently, Jonathan and Uncle Kill were good at dealing lethal blows at just the right places, where little important parts were to be found. This meant that their gains were definitely going to be big. Okay then, I think altogether we can pay 4,300 gold pieces for all the corpses. Romers spoke after some thought. Jonathan's eyes lit up and a confident grin surfaced on his handsome countenance. Nah, those two transcended beasts are worth at least 2,500 gold pieces on their own. The remaining beasts are all in the minor and major ranks, but there are quite a number of them. If I were to appraise them personally, I'd say they're worth at least 3,000. Together, that's at least 5,500 gold. You have to think about this from our perspective, sir. Our business needs to make a profit. We can pay 4,750 gold pieces at most. The older gentleman chipped in this time with confidence. The little kitten turned to look at Jonathan's response and could swear she had never seen his eyes look more excited. How about this? I'll put in this. With that, Jonathan pulled out a herb. It looked quite miraculous, with 3 leaves all of a violet trim and a crimson center. It even seemed to let out a dull glow. The 2 Howling Paragon employees' eyes shone brightly upon seeing this herb. A violet sun leaf, the bald man exclaimed. I've heard that you can find this herb in the Red Winter Forest. But it is very, very rare. It can be used to create cultivation enhancement potions and pills. Indeed. With this herb added in the mix, how about the fair price of 6,000 gold? Jonathan made his new offer and the 2 Howling Paragon employees seemed to go in thought for a bit while exchanging glances. They then began whispering to the other before the bald man came back with his answer. We'll pay 5,600 gold. There are plenty other shops in Evergale and I'm sure I can get way better prices if I go to them instead. Jonathan's smile turned into a deep frown. Okay. 5750 gold. The bald man responded quickly. What if I blah blah blah? The little kitten continued to lay in Jonathan's arms in shock as he bickered back and forth with these 2 employees for at least a half an hour before they finally came to a deal. Oh my bloody god. Jonathan's a demented deals freak. I'm never going shopping with him ever again. The sun's going to be bloody setting soon. Thank you for your patronage. Jonathan let out a pleased smile as he shook hands with the bald man, who can only let out a defeated sigh. He had truly never been overpowered to such an extent before. Jonathan had most definitely wormed his way into getting one of the best deals he could have got. In the end he sold the magical beasts and 3 herbs for a total of 7,000 gold. As Jonathan left the back area of the Howling Paragon, the little kitten could also let out a sigh of relief. She had grown tired of hearing about money for one day. Now then, it's time to buy you some things, little lass. Meow. Finally. I'll finally be able to do some magic soon. The little kitten's eyes lit up in excitement. Jonathan was quite attentive in his search for items. He not only ended up buying 4 items relating to magical spells for the little kitten, he also bought 2 other magical items for magical beasts. The first item was a collar. This collar was quite comfy and had a spherical bell hanging from the front. This bell held the magical component of the collar. The bell was called the calling bell and can connect a magical beast to its owner. When in danger, for example, the little kitten can concentrate her aura to activate the bell, which will notify the owner through a psychic connection that she is in danger. In this case, Jonathan had made the connection with the calling bell, so if she is in danger it would be him she would be notifying for help. At the same time, the bell can also release an aura blast of the same level of power of the magical beast's master for the briefest of seconds. This will act as a deterrence for the attackers of the beast. The second magical item was a bracelet. This bracelet, when activated, would shoot out in front of the little kitten and seek out her target and explode in a blast of aura. It's a one-time use item, but it is quite powerful, able to defeat a minor rank beast and hold off a major rank beast or the magician's equivalent rankings. Soon enough, Jonathan had led the little kitten and the rest of their party to an inn in the northern part of Evergale with the help of a magical item that let him communicate with Uncle Kill, who led them to where he had settled down. Meanwhile, apart from cultivating, the little kitten was feeling excited and was settling her nerves as she would soon be learning those magical spells. Chapter 13, Little Kitten Learns Spells, 1. The The sky was dark above and the moon was shining in a crescent glow. In the northern district of Evergale City, Jonathan, the little kitten and the Wilderwolf soldiers had just arrived at the front of a building. This building was somewhat bigger than the surrounding houses and still had a dim light shining through its vacant circular windows. Above the wooden door was written the White Fox Inn in fancy black cursive, though the little kitten couldn't read it. This was the inn that Uncle Kill had rented for their stay in the city. Upon entry into the establishment, the little kitten could hear the bumblinks of various people amidst conversation, and among those talking the loudest was a familiar voice. It was Uncle Kill, who was sitting with his soldiers and servants whilst bragging about his various exploits. There was this one time, when me and Lil Jonathan were fighting this really strong major beast. It was I can't remember. Anyway, we were fighting it. And, amidst the fight I had just the greatest idea. The perfect plan to surprise the beast and gain the upper hand in the fight. What I did was, I briefed him right in front of it. Ha 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 ha. Ha ha ha. And that worked. One of the soldiers couldn't help but ask. Like a charm. Ha ha ha. Wait, haven't you already told that story tonight? Who cares? Bottoms up. You should hear how I got back at him. Jonathan had a cunning grin as he grabbed a seat and joined in on their conversation, alerting them to his presence. The 4 soldiers with him also grabbed seats while the little kitten remained in Jonathan's soft grip. At this point the party had taken up around half of the bar's space. Luckily this was quite a big inn, made for parties of this size and a little more. With extra mouths, the servants quickly stood up to order more drinks and some food from the barman, and after being served, they spent around an hour telling jokes and tales of the past. The moon had risen to its apex by the time the bar was being closed down and everyone went off to their individual rooms. Like usual, the soldiers and servant shared 3-bedded rooms while Jonathan and Uncle Kill stayed in the best rooms available in the inn by themselves, and of course, the little kitten benefited from the advantage of being a beast and stayed with Jonathan this night as well. Not having drunk beer like everyone else, Jonathan was still coherent when they got to their room and immediately began to introduce the little kitten to her spells. She still didn't know much about what he had bought, as he had decided on his choices internally. As a greenhorn, it's not like she would have been able to help much, anyway. Her eyes were glued on his as Jonathan began. It's been a long day and I'm tired and you've been cultivating all day, so you've got to be pretty tired as well, so I don't want you staying up too late. So after this, you're going straight to bed. You got that? Meow. She replied, a little dispiritedly. All right then. Let's start with your first magical spell. As he said this, Jonathan reached into his magic pocket and pulled out a rather precious-looking flat wooden box. It was simple in design but had an engraving on its lid. This engraving was of a pentagon. Inside the pentagon were 5 beasts. One beast looked like a viscous wolf, another like a beautiful fox, the third looked like a soaring bird, the fourth a mysterious lizard-like creature, and the last beast was a dragon with its body snaked into an S shape. This was the symbol of the Howling Paragon. See this symbol? That's the symbol of the Howling Paragon, but it's even more than that. It also portrays images of the 5 legendary beasts. These beasts have existed as long as history and are said to still be out there to this day. They are probably the strongest beings alive in this world. Any one of them is probably on par with the 4 saints combined. Meow. So the strongest things are magical beasts. Ha ha ha, take that stinky humans. Ha ha ha, you have quite the amusing expressions, little lass. Yeah, while in general humans can get as powerful as magical beasts, our longevity is a major drawback in the end. For magicians, at the foundation rank and onward, our longevity will continue to increase with every increase in rank. But that's even more so for magical beasts. Little lass, if you keep growing in power, you'll live for a long time. Increased longevity. That's amazing. I wonder how much of an increase though. Okay, back on topic. Jonathan then proceeded to place the box in his hands on the ground right in front of the little kitten. With gentle hands, he then lifted up the lid and placed it to the side. The little kitten's eyes were wide in concentration as she studied the items inside the box as if they were the biggest treasures on the planet. Inside the box were 2 items. On the right side of the box sat a black book. It didn't have many pages, and on the front were the words she couldn't understand, and on the left side of the box was an azure-colored stone around the size of a fist. It shone with a dim glow and was quite eye-catching. This is the Dance of the Flames arts. It's not just a spell but what is called an art. An art has several stages, of which garner more powerful spells. This magic in particular is a technique that both magicians and magical beasts can learn and has 5 stages. The first stage requires its user to be of the middle stage minor rank. The second is late stage minor rank. The third is low stage major rank, and so on. You probably get the gist. The strongest spell, the 5th spell, is called Dragon Inferno and is of the late stage major rank. You'll learn all this once you touch this item. As Jonathan said this, he pointed to the azure gem in the box with a shining expression. This, little lass, is one of the greatest allies to a magician. An echo stone. Echo stones are powerful magical items that allow magicians to imprint memories, images, and other such things inside. This is used mainly in the purposes of passing on magical knowledge and spells. Touch this stone and you'll see a vision so real that you'll feel like you're experiencing it firsthand and being taught by a tutor about every single piece of knowledge that magician knew on a certain topic. The dangers of echo stones is that if the magic being shown in them is too powerful, not only will you have trouble seeing any images, you can be badly damaged. Or worse. The little kitten couldn't help but take an apprehensive step backwards. Jonathan laughed at her reaction before continuing. But for spells like these, you'd have no problem even if you were in the low realm and you were learning a spell at the transcendent stage. You'd have trouble learning anything, sure, but you'd not suffer that much damage. It's the magic beyond major transcendence that you must not touch. Got that? Your mind and soul wouldn't be able to handle it at your level. Meow. The little kitten nodded furiously. Though it sounds like you're belittling me with that last statement. TCH. But, well, I ain't got a death wish, so I'll take this warning to heart. Good. Now on to the next 3. And with that, 3 other boxes appeared with a swish of his sleeves. Chapter 14, Little Kitten Learns Spells, 2. Swish. 3 boxes, identical to the one from before, were pulled out from Jonathan's bag of holding and placed delicately in front of the little kitten, whose eyes lit up with excitement once more. 2 out of the 3 boxes were duplicates of the first box, while the final box differentiated itself by being a sky blue color. Jonathan started with the 2 normal, wooden-colored boxes first and opened their contents simultaneously. With the lids of the 2 boxes peeled off, the little kitten could see that inside these boxes were the same azure blue stone and books that she couldn't read once more. These 2 spells are especially used by magical beast. The first spell is called the Ravager Armor spell. As you can imagine, this spell is a defensive spell that will bind its user a protective armor. This spell can use 2 elements to fuel it: earth and metal. The spell is strongest when used with the element of metal, but to create an armor of metal that can surround your whole body can be rather tiring. Though with your small stature, that shouldn't be much of an issue. That's why this spell is perfect for you. Also, just cause this spell is a late-stage spell doesn't mean you can't attempt to learn it now. You'll probably be unable to use metal fully in the spell, but with the help of using earth you could make a weaker but still strong version of the Ravager Armor spell. Got that? Meow. The little kitten lets out its usual meow. So the first one was a magical art with several spells split up into 5 realms, while this is a singular spell that provides great defense. With just these 2 I could probably not die in a battle with another magical beast or magician at the same level, maybe. Sigh. This guy's quite something. I might not even become their tamed beast and he's still willing to pay for all these spells. I didn't see how much they cost, but they couldn't have been cheap. Before her thoughts could progress any further, Jonathan's voice woke her from her stupor. Good. The next spell is called Celestial Claw and is actually the first spell in a magical art. However, that magical art is quite rare and costs quite a penny. For now, the first spell is good enough to greatly increase your offensive capabilities. The magical art is called the Celestial Wind Arts, by the way, so if you ever find good fortune and come across more spells from that art or even the art itself, definitely vie for it. Meow. Now on to the last box. When he said this, Jonathan proceeded to point to the final box, which was painted blue like the sky. The color of this box signifies the rarity and the worth of this item. This isn't just for items in the Howling Paragon but is a universal concept. Items have 3 colors that show off its rarity. Blue is a normal rarity, next is purple, and the most rare is gold. A good thing to know is that the higher an item's rarity doesn't correlate to its power. Items are first ranked with the following ranks: dull, vibrant, and pulsing. Dull magical items are for magicians of natural state and foundation rank, or for minor and major mycal beast rank. Vibrant is for inner haven and spirit rank, or minor and major transcendence rank. And finally, pulsing is for the magicians and magical beasts beyond. Anyway, as you can tell then, this item is a dull magical item of blue rarity. Meow. The little kitten's eyes were spinning after such a long explanation, and she couldn't help but take several seconds in thought to process everything. So items are ranked as well. Dull, vibrant, and pulsing. These 3 ranks correlate to the item's strength, while the color ranks blue, purple, and gold correlate to the item's rarity. I see. It's a lot to take in, I know. You'll come to understand this as time goes on. Well, you'll have plenty of time to let this all settle and learn much more. Jonathan smirked. Meow. Now then, let's open this up. As Jonathan opened the final box, the little kitten could see that the insides were much the same as the other boxes, with the exception of the book, which was now also a blue color. On the book was the phrase "Arrows Shattering Sky Arts," though of course the little kitten remained ignorant of this, much to her growing frustration. This little lass is another magical art. This magical art has 5 stages. Starting at the late stage of minor rank up to late minor transcendence rank. Once again, this art can be used by both magicians and magical beasts. However, this can only be used with the metal element due to the nature of the spell. In this magic you will form various arrows of different strengths and numbers to attack your enemy or even to defend. In each stage there are various spells. In the first stage alone there are 2 spells. The differentiating factor of these stages is different for each advancement of stage. It can be an increase in the number of arrows you can create or the creation of a special type of arrow. You will naturally find out when you study this art. Now then, I think that's everything. Little lass, it's very late, and while a magician's and magical beast's aura can be used as a source of energy to fend off hunger, thirst, and tiredness, it is still beneficial for us to sleep because it revitalizes the mind. And when learning magic, you obviously want to have your brain in its best condition. So go to sleep before you even attempt touching any of these echo stones. Got that? Meow. Nuh-uh, don't give me those eyes. To bed. The little kitten could barely sleep at all that night as her thoughts wandered from working through all she had just learned and her excitement for the future. Chapter 15, Little Kitten Learns Spells, 3. The little kitten woke up to the sound of rummaging. Lazily, she opened her eyes slowly and saw Jonathan organizing the 4 boxes of spells and arts a little ways from the bed. She lied there hazily for a bit as she watched Jonathan finish up everything and then head to the door to exit the room. Thud. With an inaudible yawn, she proceeded to stretch out her dainty little paws before pulling herself up, and she felt the softness of the mattress beneath her, which threatened to put her to sleep once more. With determination she snapped herself out of her sleepy state of mind and immediately switched her attention towards the boxes, which had now been laid out nicely and open, prepped for her to begin her training. For a fool, he can be surprisingly thoughtful. It would have been a pain opening those boxes with my tiny and inarticulate paws. With a last yawn, she then leaped softly off the bed and onto the wooden floor below. In only a few steps she is in front of the 4 boxes and sits down, looking over them thoughtfully. Now then. From what I remember, the only method I can train these spells, or arts, is to use these azure stones, which will show me various images to teach me their respected magic. And because I sadly can't read yet, I'm unable to make use of these books as of now. It shouldn't matter too much, but it would be better if I could learn how to read so that I can gain more knowledge of the magic I'm learning. Jonathan said that the more I learn, the stronger my magic will be. Thinking up to this point, she then proceeds to look over each of the boxes over once more. For now, I made sure to remember the words on these books so I know what magic each of these boxes are. Now then, Here's the big question. Which one should I practice first? Well, I think I should have a look at all of them before I make a decision. The little kitten then walks up to the leftmost box, looking down at it and stretching out her paw towards the azure stone but not touching it quite yet. Let's start with a spell. This one should be the Celestial Claw spell, which is only the first spell in a magical art. But this is all that I've got for now. Okay then. Let's begin. Holding out her left paw, she cautiously presses down on the azure stone and immediately her vision stirs. The first thing that happens is that her vision is covered by a blinding white light. The blinding white then turns prismatic before twisting in bizarre ways. Eventually she begins to hear muffled voices and the prismatic colors seem to dull more and more until everything turns dark. How terrifying. I'm starting to feel a little nauseous. In the darkness, she starts to see something growing clearer and eventually she can make out a shadowed figure. Finally, the figure grows less blurry and becomes as clear as day. It's as if she can see the figure and the scenery surrounding the figure right in front of her. This figure is a dog-like beast. It's several times larger than an ordinary dog, however, reaching around 10 feet in height as it stands loftily in front of the little kitten's vision. It has rather long white fur that has a tinge of violet. Its ears are rather long and pointed with red tips. It has 2 tails that extended a great length from its body and they also tint red at the tip. Its glowing violet eyes are aloof and cold as it looks straight forward, its gaze concentrated at the onlooker of whoever would touch this echo stone, which happened to be her in this case. The scenery around this creature is a very simple large white tiled room with an archway door at the other end of the room. I am Alessander. He can talk. The little kitten exclaimed internally. That would mean that this magical beast is at least at the transcendent stage according to what Jonathan has told me. I am a disciple of the Celestial Eye Guild, the creators of the Celestial Wind Arts. The spell that you are about to learn is the first spell of the Celestial Wind Arts and is called Celestial Claw. You don't need to know anything more than that. There is a coldness to his voice and a sense of pride as he introduces himself. It is obvious that he feels a sense of superiority due to his identity and this guild he is affiliated with. A guild? I'll have to ask Jonathan about those. When I find a way to communicate with him. I'll start off by showing you this move in practice and then I'll follow that by explaining the principles behind the spell. Now watch closely. Alessander faces away from the little kitten and walks around 10 feet away before settling into a crouched down position. He has his head and front legs low while his back legs are propped upwards. He looks very much like a beast prepped to leap out and strike. Phew. This is the Celestial Claw. After shouting this, Alessander then starts muttering an incantation before pouncing forwards. Immediately his right paw begins to glow in an azure glow. The aura is visible. Does magic become visible if concentrated enough? The little kitten reasons. Soon, the azure glow starts to take form of a claw-like shape, growing until it becomes 5x the size of his paw, all the while the azure glow mellows out and then begins to morph into a white glow, giving off a celestial and holy feeling. With this celestial white claw fully formed, Alessander brings up this right paw above his head and growls in a threatening manner before swiping the air, his right paw becoming a blur of unimaginable speed. The result of this swipe brings forth 4 white lines that surge forwards at great speeds. It seems to pick up speed as it moves forward and the air in front of it seems to part as if granting it passage. The 4 white lines eventually strike one of the white walls and cuts through it instantly and seems to go on for several feet while visibly weakening until it eventually trickles out of existence. A few seconds pass and to the little kitten's shock, the white wall suddenly begins to morph and in a matter of seconds, that scar in the wall heals. In the end it looks like there had never been a claw mark there just moments ago. This is the power of magic. The little kitten's eyes light up in a furious awe. Meanwhile, the large dog-like magical beast has settled himself and begins to speak once more. The Celestial Claw is a very fast attack. While it is not the most powerful spells available for a minor ranked beast, it is most definitely one of the quickest attacks when used right and will only grow faster and more powerful the stronger you become. This spell can still be useful even for minor and major transcended beasts. This spell uses 2 factors to unleash it. The first is the use of aura materialization. If you are ignorant of what aura materialization is, then let me explain. Aura materialization is the action of condensing your aura repeatedly until it changes from its invisible gaseous form and turns into a malleable and visible form. When aura is materialized like this, your aura can interact with the outside world and, just like how you've seen, turn into deadly attack. Aura materialization, huh? I bet there are quite a few spells that use this. Now that that's out of the way. The second factor behind the celestial claw is the element of wind. After you send out the claw attack, the caster of the spell will incorporate wind laws to the spell. The element of wind is known for its speed and sharpness, and there is no better spell to show this off than Celestial Claw. So, he only added wind after the aura claws left his paws. I guess the wind acts more as an assistance in this magic. The wind will bend to the attack's will, increasing the attack's sharpness while being buffeted away, decreasing wind resistance. It's pretty amazing how quickly I am able to understand this stuff. It's strange, none of my memories of my past life taught me stuff like this, but it feels like certain knowledge is just inherent, like the knowledge is always there just ready to be released. This must have to do with my identity or how I came to be in this world. Like, according to Jonathan and the rest, they have never seen a magical beast like me. And as pleasing as that sounds, it's quite disconcerting. And lonely. The lesson with Alexander in the Echo Stone continued for a while longer as he better explained the inner workings of Celestial Claw until the vision shifted again. This time, the little kitten saw a series of visions showing off the Celestial Claw being used in different scenarios. She saw the attack being used against a wild magical beast and how the 4 lines of white cut cleanly through its tough shell. The piercing power of this attack definitely isn't to be taken lightly. Another vision showed the spell being used in the air to strike down a poor bird who was flying overhead. The range of the attack was rather impressive as well, the little kitten deduced. Finally, the visions came to an end with showing the close-up image of a bird flying in the sky. Her vision is close up to its right wing and she can see the wind caress its wings as it swishes by. Ah, I see. It's trying to show that the laws of wind in the Celestial Claw spell are much like how the agile wings of a bird allows it to bend the gales of the wind to its will. And the vision concludes abruptly with a flash of white light, just like how the vision began. In a matter of seconds, the little kitten's eyes adjust to find herself still in the inn room, her paws hovering over the azure echo stone as her mind continues to process everything. Chapter 16, The Thunder Mountain Hunt. The little kitten is still for a moment longer before she finally places her left paw on the wooden floor and looks on thoughtfully. It's definitely a powerful spell. But I can't practice the spell in the middle of a city, it would cause too much damage. Ah! The little kitten shakes herself out of her stupor and turns to the next box. Inside the wooden box she can see the book laying snugly inside it, and she ponders over the words written upon it. I believe this is the Ravager armor spell. Now, this is a defensive spell. So this should be a good spell to practice. Let's see how difficult this one looks. More firmly than the last time, the little kitten places her little paws upon the echo stone for the Ravager armor spell with renewed vigor. Instantly her greenish-red eyes turn a dull color as her vision warps and she finds herself watching the contents of the echo stone. Several minutes later, the little kitten's previously dull eyes return to their usual glow as she awakened. Amazing, so this echo stone's visions were quite different from the first one. The first echo stone, for the Celestial Claw, had a teacher show off the spell and explain, while for the Ravager armor spell's echo stone, it was very different. It started with various shots of earth and metal being molded into shapes, hardened and refined into a more powerful material. This material took on a fluid form of both earth and metal. They showed this material splitting into 2, one made of earth while the other metal. Individually, the 2 separate materials began to take shape and one could see them take the form of a full set of armor that seemed fit for some form of beast. The 2 armors then drew close to each other and seemed to fuse, and in the end, one armor stood, consisting of both metal and earth. It was quite amazing to see such hardened materials flow like water. Truly magical. The echo stone then showed various weapons striking against the armor, and the armor stood strong throughout. That was until the vision revealed a blurred being wielding a massive spiked club that held various golden runes on its black body. With a single smash, the armor crumbled. That truly shocked me, like, why are they showing the user of the spell being destroyed? But it was only a prelude. As the vision seemed to reverse, the armor put itself back together while the spiked club was pulled back by the blurry being. The scene began to play once more, however this time, the armor showed some change. Its earthly materials were being pulled out to be replaced with metallic ones. This time, when the armor was pounded to the ground, despite a small cave-in and scratch marks, the armor actually stood strong. Amazing, truly a great defensive spell. Before she could finish her thoughts, the door was suddenly opened in a rather leisurely pace and a yawning Jonathan walked in, giving the little kitten a welcoming smile as he did so. He walked over to the bed and sat on its edge before facing her once again. "Good morning, little lass." "Meow. Looks like you've started your training. There's not much I can do to help you to understand these magics at this point, as you can't ask me questions, so you're just gonna have to repeatedly view their echo stones to gain as much knowledge and understanding as possible." The little kitten nods in understanding. "Well, this might help. If there are any parts in the echo stones you want to skip, with a single thought you can. Just think about the part of the vision you want to see and the echo stone will skip to the part. This can also be reversed, so you can rewatch a part again as many times as you want." Meow. Yeah, that's the beauty of echo stones. They are definitely one of the best tools at a magician's disposal. What else can I help you with? Oh, I don't know if the echo stones you've seen have told you, but you might be wondering how you can use these spells if you can't speak. The little kitten nods her head again. Well, while you can't speak our language, all magical beasts have an innate understanding of the language of spells, or what is otherwise called the god's tongue, and can actually speak them. You can test this out. How about you recall the incantation for that Ravager armor spell you just learned? Meow. With another enthusiastic nod, the little kitten raises up from her sitting position. She closes her eyes in thought, recalling the incantation. With the incantation remembered, she then slowly inhales and just as slowly exhales before her mouth begins to dance as an enchantingly delicate and feminine voice rings out. The words fly out of her mouth in a fluent manner to the shock of Jonathan. That shocked expression soon fades into a pleased grin. She's quite the natural. The chant of the spell comes to an end and an azure glow begins to encompass the little kitten's body. That azure glow suddenly becomes dull at the center point of her back as an earthen material surfaces. The earthen armor begins to form quickly and in seconds the little kitten is fully encompassed in her Ravager armor. Fully formed, the earthen look fades and takes on a metallic gleam. It covers most of her body and even snakes up her sleek tail. Around her head, the armor only forms at the side of her cheeks, allowing for good maneuverability of her neck while also not impeding her sight. Ha ha ha. You even have around 5% of metal element in this armor. Amazing. You've got some good insight. I've got to give you that, little lass. Meow. Of course, you idiot. Who do you think you're talking to? The little kitten raises her chin proudly with a small hmpth sound, and Jonathan doesn't know if he should laugh or cry in response. This one's quite the character. Ha ha ha. My little sis is definitely gonna like her. Well then, I should tell you what me and Uncle Kill have decided on for our next destination. The little kitten's ears perk up and she lowers her chin to return her attention to Jonathan. Hee, glad to have your attention again. Now then, my uncle had been talking to another band of adventurers last night and this morning and has gotten word of an event happening in a month. This event is called the Thunder Mountain Hunt. It's an event run by the Falsio Kingdom every 2 years and takes place in the Northern Mountains, a large section of the kingdom that takes up most of the north. One of the biggest mountains in the Northern Mountains is the Thunder Mountain. It's a rather mysterious place with many dangers, but also many rewards. This'll be a good chance to perhaps happen upon some good fortune that can improve our magic, or we can even find magical items. I heard a few people have attained vibrant magical items there in the past. The little kitten's eyes light up. I wonder if any of those good fortunes will come my way. Probably not, huh? Even if I make a breakthrough to the late stage of minor rank. Sigh. I bet I would be unable to even grasp one of these good fortunes even if it came my way. Oh well, I can still test my mettle on various beasts. When I reach the late stage, I'll definitely have the power to contend with magicians and magical beasts of my own level with the power of these spells. The little kitten's eyes shut for a second before opening with a new sense of determination. She had a deep craving to use more magic, especially after pulling off the Ravager armor spell, which by now has dissipated against her will. Looks like this armor take up a lot of aura. I tired out in less than a minute. Makes sense, considering it's a late stage spell and I'm using it in the middle stage, I guess. Well then. Little lass, how about you take a break from those echo stones for now and join me downstairs? You've still not eaten yet and I need some company. Meow. Using so much aura was quite taxing, it even made me hungry as well. I'm starving. With a wide smile, Jonathan steps up from the bed and holds his hands out in a catching gesture. The little kitten's red-green eyes narrow at this. There's no way I'm jumping in your arms, Morin. The little kitten rolls her eyes. Haha. Okay. Let me pick you up at least. Meow. Well, I'll forgive your impertinence this one time, Humph. And with that, she was gently picked up by Jonathan and lead out of the room. With a gentle pull, the door is closed and the duo begin their descent down the stairs towards the bar. Chapter 17, Magical Laws. After heading to the first floor of the inn, Jonathan quickly located Uncle Kill and the Wilderwolf soldiers in the middle of a discussion. Food was already laid out waiting to be grabbed, and when Jonathan and the little kitten got settled, the little kitten went immediately to work on the various foods. Uncle, so this Thunder Mountain hunt is a month away. How long does it take to travel there from here? Jonathan asked before taking a swig of his drink. Right now, we're situated in the upper parts of the east of Falsio and it'll only take a few days to reach the north. From there it'll take around a week and a half to reach Thunder Mountain. So in total, it should take around 2 weeks to reach our destination. This leaves us 1 week of free time, so feel free to spend this next week enjoying your time in this city, and then 1 week from now, we are set to head off towards Thunder Mountain. Yes, sir. Got it, Uncle. Meow. A week passed by quite quickly and the little kitten spent that time peering her consciousness into the last 2 echo stones. These last 2 echo stones were for magical arts and were somewhat different compared to echo stones for spells. For magical arts, the echo stone would limit the viewer's vision at a certain point, disallowing them from seeing too far past their magical rank. In the case of these 2 magical arts, the little kitten could only see the spells available at the minor magical beast rank. When the little kitten makes a breakthrough into major rank, only then could she learn the higher ranking spells associated with that rank. However, the echo stones still contain some information on their respective magical arts and gave the little kitten an understanding at the level of requirement needed for every spell. The first magical art she studied was the Dance of the Flames art. This art uses the element of fire as its main attribute and is a very strong offensive spell. This art was split into 5 spells, each an evolution of its predecessor. The Echo Stone gave a list of the spells and their requirements. Middle stage minor rank, Living Spark. Late stage minor rank, Wandering Glow. Early stage major rank, Ravaging Blaze. Mid stage major rank, Dominating Blaze. Late stage major rank, Dragon Inferno. All the spells in this art are similar to each other and every level seemed to evolve in strength. The next art was the Arrow Shattering Sky art. This art used the element of metal to unleash fast and far-reaching attacks in the form of various arrows. Instead of being split up in spells, the Arrow Shattering Sky art is separated into 5 stages, with each stage having several spells. The information given in the Echo Stone only told her of the spells available in the stages of the minor rank and only told her of the titles of the later stages. The Arrow Shattering Sky art was presented as such. First stage, Foundation stage, late stage minor rank. First spell, Sky Piercing Arrow. Second spell, Sky Piercing Bolt. Second stage, Duplication stage, early mid stage major rank. Third stage, Variation stage, late stage major rank. Fourth stage, Combination stage, early mid stage minor transcendence rank. Fifth stage, Formation stage, late stage minor transcendence rank. The aspect that amazed the little kitten the most was at the end of both Echo Stones was that a flurry of information was transferred from the stone to her mind and gave her a bunch of knowledge that furthered her knowledge of these arts. She was amazed that in but a flash, she had gained a whole book's worth of knowledge. All with the benefit of not having to read. One of the most valuable pieces of knowledge she gained in both of these echo stones was about magical laws. In magic, the elements all contain the natural laws of the world, and to gain better knowledge of their own elements, magicians and magical beasts alike need constant study into these laws. What surprised the little kitten the most was that one could study the magical laws of elements that they are not aligned to and even put them into practice. So while she only has the rare element of metal, she could, in theory, study the magical laws of ice, space, light, or whatever element she wished. However, there were many factors to take note of when studying foreign elements like this. 1. To study an element one isn't aligned to is several times more difficult and requires an impeccable amount of insight on its magical laws. Normally, the thread of element in one's inner haven would aid one in their study of its element. However, without this thread, studying an element is like learning to read a book of a language you don't know. 2. With an aligned element, the element will consistently grow stronger as the threads suck in a person's aura constantly, especially during breakthroughs. When studying foreign elements, unless with the help of a very powerful item of some sorts, one's affinity with an element will only improve with active study, which obviously takes up a lot of a person's time. For this reason, magician and magical beasts would rarely study more than one foreign element, if at all. The little kitten had to let out a long sigh as she processed all of this new information before moving on. Meanwhile, apart from her training, she had also joined Jonathan in touring Evergale City once or twice. Throughout the city she got to see various magicians using magic in their daily lives. It seemed even the standard citizen had some level of magic, as she saw a few people light fires in their hands to fuel devices, and she even saw kids playing with water, shooting them out of their tiny fingers at each other, which reminded her of those damn kids in her past life that would shoot her with water pistols. Time leisurely passed like this, and by the end of the week, everyone was ready to depart Evergale City. New provisions had been bought, and without delay, they walked out of the city gates and began the journey northwards. Destination: Thunder Mountain. Currently, the party were on a long stretch of dirt, a path that led into the horizon. There, the geography was of a grassy plain as far as the eyes can see. There were only a few trees dotting the landscape, and to the far left, around a mile away, a small village could also be seen, the people there living their everyday mundane lives. The sky was calm, with white clouds passing by and the sun peeking out behind them. In Jonathan's hands, the little kitten was currently meditating. Her cultivation had proven fruitful as she found her soul growing ever brighter, and it was now around the size of a fist. She could feel a great pressure whenever she looked at it with her subconscious eye. It was quite apparent that she was getting close to the peak of the middle stage. "Uncle Kill, are we doing any sightseeing along the way to this Thunder Mountain?" Jonathan asked while petting the soft bundle of fur in his hands. That'll be impossible, I'm afraid. We've only got a little more than 2 weeks to get to Thunder Mountain, and to get there will take around 2 weeks. We're gonna have to be on the move for the most part. TCH, I thought we could have time for some spars, Uncle. We've got some scores to settle. Ha 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 ha. You punk, don't you worry yourself. There's still plenty of time for me to kick your ass a few times on the way. Hey, we'll see about that. I've finally completed the 3rd stage of the Breath of the Elements art. Already? You little rat, when will you stop giving this old man a shock? Uncle Kill's eyes were opened wide in shock before narrowing in fake anger. Meow. Listen to this, kitten. The Breath of the Elements art is a very powerful art of extreme importance to the Wilderwolf family. It usually takes around 3 years to reach the 3rd stage from the 1st stage. But this foolish nephew of mine has apparently accomplished this in less than a year. Sigh. You must have inherited it from me somehow. Yeah, right, if I inherited my talent from you, I'd be bound to be stuck at spirit rank my whole life. No thank you. You ungrateful brat, you want to spar now? Anytime, Uncle. The little kitten found herself being quickly placed in the arms of one of the Wilderwolf soldiers as the uncle and nephew duo walked off into the grassy fields just a dozen meters from the dirt path. Everyone else surrounded them in a half circle. A variety of them started betting on who'd win. A spar. Finally. I'll get to see 2 magicians in action. The little kitten looked on with rapt attention. Ready, Uncle? Jonathan's fingers tightened as he lowered himself into a fighting stance, a grin plastered on his handsome features. Humph. You ungrateful little brat, how about you show me your comprehension in the breath of the elements ART's third stage? Uncle Kill's fighting stance was much like Jonathan's as a smirk broke out on his bald head. A battle between nephew and uncle was about to begin, and the little kitten's eyes couldn't help but narrow her jagged eyes further in deep concentration, not willing to miss a second of this upcoming bout. Chapter 18, Spar. We'll use the usual rules, right uncle? Jonathan inquired. Right. I'll lower my aura levels to that of a peak-level late-stage Inner Haven magician, and I'm disallowed from using my spirit avatar. Uncle Kill and Jonathan both stood at a distance of around 10 meters from one another, the grassy field swaying beneath their feet. At this time, the little kitten had refrained from cultivating as she watched with narrowed eyes. She was definitely going to watch this spar with her full intention. You can lower your aura levels. That's pretty amazing. And what's this spirit avatar? I would assume it's a power a magician gains at the spirit rank. Hey, do you think the young master will finally get his third win this time? One of the Wilder Wolf soldiers asked another, his eyes not leaving the two magicians for even a second. I don't know. One of the nearby soldiers started to ponder. His previous 2 wins were due to surprise attacks. Unless he has a new secret technique on his hands, I don't see how an Inner Haven magician can defeat a spirit magician. Even if Master has lowered his aura. Another soldier helplessly shook his head. Yeah, Master still has a several dozen more spells and techniques compared to the young Master. A 4th soldier sighed. Interesting. Jonathan has only won twice. I guess this shows the great advantage of wisdom. Uncle Kill is sure to have a huge advantage with his level of experience. Okay, enough. Are you ready, Uncle? Jonathan said, a smirk tugging at his lips. Humph. I'll let you begin. Show me the third stage of the breath of the element ART's technique, the elemental body. Hehe, don't you worry, last time I could only use the second stage, but with this third stage, I'm only 1 stage lower than your understanding of the same art. Jonathan's lips contorted into a confident grin before he began to chant the spell. Elemental body. Boom. Jonathan's aura suddenly blew out in all directions, shocking the little kitten and even the Wilder Wolf soldiers and servants. Even though they had seen this elemental body of the breath of the element art many times, its might was still shocking every time they saw it. Suddenly the temperature seemed to dip and a few meter area around Jonathan began to frost over. The most peculiar sight was Jonathan's breath, which began to breath out a visible mist of light blue color. This signified that Jonathan was using his ice element as the source of this elemental body. Oh, he's using ice this time. A Wilder Wolf soldier stated with a big smile. He usually uses lightning even though ice is his strongest element. But when compared to the masters, it still falls short, so using lightning should be the greater choice if he doesn't want to be overwhelmed. A second soldier looked on skeptically. His ice element must have grown stronger, so he's testing his improved ice element. Even if the young master doesn't win, he's sure to gain insight into his newly improved ice elemental laws. So it's a win-win really. Uncle Kill meanwhile started nodding his head. He was definitely pleased in the level of power shown by this foolish nephew of his. Young nephew, your ice elemental body is definitely powerful, but yet, it still falls short. Uncle Kill's voice bellowed, and without even speaking a chant, his aura flared out and the temperature around him dipped. The grass beneath his feet visibly froze over and his hair danced while his breath tumbled out in a light blue color which was more concentrated than Jonathan's. A chantless spell? That just goes to show how great Uncle Kill's understanding of this spell is. There doesn't seem to be an obvious difference between the 3rd and 4th stage of this breath of the elements elemental body spell. If I were to guess, it would seem this spell amplifies your power in a singular element, and with each stage, it probably increases the multiplication of that power. Truly powerful. You know, Kitten. Body transformation techniques are some of the most powerful spells available to magicians and magical beasts alike. The person holding the little kitten spoke, his free hand stroking her soft silver fur. That's definitely true. Most magicians are either close-distance fighters or are ranged fighters. Some are a mixture of both. But every single one of them wants to know a powerful body transformation technique. 4 defense, strength, speed, reaction speed and many other advantages. It will help you in most every aspect. A nearby soldier added. Meow. Body transformation techniques seem quite powerful. I wonder if I'll be allowed to learn this breath of the element art if I choose to become their tamed beast. Alright, ready or not, here I come. Uncle Kill growled between a large grin. Bang! Dust flew abound and Uncle Kill's previously still figure shot forward and turned into a shadow, his body a blur as he sped forward in a line towards Jonathan, who at this time had already begun to chant a spell. Boom! Before the blur that was Uncle Kill could reach Jonathan, a large ice wall around 10 feet tall formed before him and blocked his way. In reaction, Uncle Kill's advancement didn't stop and he only winded up his right fist in preparation. Bang! A shocking punch blasted into that ice wall and that ice wall that was nearly a meter thick cracked and then exploded with that single punch. Uncle Kill didn't stay still long before leaping forward once more. On the other side, Jonathan didn't seem perturbed by this show of pure strength as he had seen this many times before. Your strength is still as strong as ever, Uncle. Jonathan's had time to say this before he suddenly exhaled audibly. Seeing this, Uncle Kill's eyes couldn't help but contract. The breath of the elements elemental breath spell. He's using this attack straight away. Uncle Kill's body screamed to a stop and he began to twist rightward before heading off in that direction. Before he fully leaped away, Jonathan exhaled and from his mouth a light blue-colored mist shot out at an extreme speed, heading in Uncle Kill's direction. Luckily for Uncle Kill, he had reacted quickly and had leaped away to only have his left elbow touching this blue-colored mist for but less than a second. However, this less than a second had already frosted over that left elbow, coloring the area around his elbow a dull blue color. By the time the mist dissipated, Uncle Kill had come to a still a few meters from Jonathan once more, his eyes on his left elbow as he attempted to move it. Yet his left arm's elbow felt numb, numbing the rest of his forearm. You actually used the elemental breath attack straight away. That must have taken away around 30% of your aura. Too bad you only disabled my left hand, foolish nephew. Uncle Kill's eyes contained pure confidence as he re-entered his martial pose, only his left arm lay limp. Humph, we all know that your strongest weapons are your fists, Uncle. To disable your left hand was more than worth it, Jonathan said with confidence equal to that of his uncle's. Ha! I could beat you up with my pinky, Uncle Kill's voice bellowed once more. With no more words, Uncle Kill charged forth once more. All the while, the little kitten was looking on with widened eyes. One can only imagine the damage caused by being fully enveloped by that elemental breath attack. Have a taste of mind break. After saying this, Uncle Kill chanted a spell that suddenly caused Jonathan to freeze to a still for a second, stopping him from completing the spell he was in the middle of chanting. His consciousness returned a second later, but by that time, Uncle Kill was less than a meter from him and his right fist was eclipsing his sight another second later. Boom! Jonathan was thrown off his feet and sent several meters, tumbling along the way and kicking up grass and dirt along the way. His body only came at a stop when he bashed into a wayward boulder, heavily cracking it. Guff! Jonathan spat out a bit of blood and slowly raised to his feet, his gaze steady as he kept his watch over his uncle's movements. Uncle Kill at this time was still at this point until he suddenly made a gesture with his still active right hand, beckoning his nephew to come at him. Your turn, dear nephew, Uncle Kill said in a provoking manner. TCH. Jonathan clenched his teeth where a bit of blood continued to drip out. That mind break spell is rather disgusting. Luckily, like the elemental breath spell, it also takes up a lot of aura to use. He can't possibly use it any more than a few more times. I'm gonna have to use some tricks to get around that as usual. Hee hee. Alright, it's my turn to gain the upper hand. Jonathan's body was still as his thoughts wandered. With a plan in mind, Jonathan suddenly smirked and spoke out. Uncle, you'll regret sparing me. Haha. We'll see about that, foolish nephew. Now come. Uncle Kill simply laughed. With pleasure. Jonathan's eyes narrowed as his face turned serious. Chapter 19, Interruption. Boom. Jonathan's body shot forward and became a blur. The sound of chanting could be heard, and suddenly, sparks began to fly wildly. The young master's finally using his lightning. One of the servants' eyes lit up with excitement. While the elemental body mostly increases a magician's power in only one element, in this case ice for the young master, it still increases the magician's other elements by a 1/5. Let me see this amazing speed of yours. Ha ha ha. Uncle Kill roared into laughter before his eyes turned serious and his muscles tensed in anticipation. Lightning, as you can imagine, marvels on its speed and destructive abilities. Have a taste of the palm flash. Jonathan growled as he got into close distance with his Uncle Kill. The lightning that burst forth from his body began to contract until it surrounded his right hand, which he struck forward, palm first. Bang! Jonathan's palm strike was met with an equally devastating punch from Uncle Kill, whose left fist shined in an azure light. With determination, Jonathan didn't let this stop him as he quickly raised his left hand to the sky and began chanting the same spell again. This time his left palm burst into sparks until lightning coalesced around it. Bang! Once again, Jonathan and Uncle Kill's palm and fist clashed, only with opposite limbs. The result was the same and the two were locked in a stalemate. Bang! 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 Strike after strike, the two exchanged multiple blows, neither of them gaining the upper hand until suddenly, Jonathan's right palm strike suddenly changed direction, dodging a clash of blows and instead striking the grassy floor beneath them. With a quick chant, Jonathan's next grand spell was Unleash. Bastard! Uncle Kill couldn't but help but growl as the earth around him suddenly turned to sludge, causing his feet to slip and become enveloped in the sludge. Jonathan was attempting to hold him hostage. He quickly attempted to counteract when suddenly the softness of the dirt that was coalescing around his feet suddenly hardened. Or more accurately, they had been frozen. Shit. Escaping this entrapment was easy for a magician of his strength, but doing it in time to avoid the enemy's next attack? Impossible. Bang. Double palm flash. Blood sprayed and Uncle Kill's stomach contracted as the impact shot through his whole body and sent him breaking free from the solid mud entrapment before sending him a dozen meters backwards. With a struggle, he was lucky as he still managed to persevere and hold himself tall on his 2 feet, not letting himself fall. I'm not gonna take this sitting down, brat. He started a chant and suddenly there was a loud roar. Jonathan's eyes narrowed in response and a sense of apprehension could be seen in them. The biting wolf spell? Jonathan couldn't help himself from exclaiming, and instantly, his guard was up and he began to chant a spell of his own. Meanwhile, on Uncle Kill's side, a surging aura escaped from his body and shot into the air in front of him before transforming into the element of ice. The ice began to warp at an incredibly fast pace and in a flash a massive, 10 feet long wolf-like creature formed of ice appeared and instantly charged forth through the air, heading straight for Jonathan. A second before the ice wolf collided with Jonathan, his spell activated and a shining azure shape appeared before him. This shape was of an intricately designed round shield that curved outwards. Uncle Kill sneered audibly. Bang! Crack! The shield was almost instantly cracked open and the wolf continued its charge. Jonathan, expecting this, had his both hands charged with the palm flash spell. Another bang reverberated throughout the area as palm met ice. Aura spread out in all directions from the clash, a reaction from the great clash, and created a fog around Jonathan for a brief second. Jonathan's body couldn't hold still from the blast and was sent tumbling backwards. Unable to gain any bearing, he smashed into a lone tree that hardly held on long before cracking and falling, leaving Jonathan laying there with his back upon its leftover stump with a rattled brain. Ooh! Looks like the tables have turned. Damn it, and I was so close this time. Jonathan grumbled to himself, pain apparent in his face as he rubbed his aching left shoulder which had taken the brunt of the biting wolf spell's attack. Ha ha ha. Foolish nephew, could it be that you've already given up? Uncle Kill's mischievous voice bellowed out. In your dreams, you old fart. I'm just getting started. Jonathan growled back through gritted teeth. Ha ha ha. Uncle Kill's laughter continued. Jonathan had risen to his feet at this point, though slowly, and was now taking cautious steps forward. This'll be the final clash. All right then. Whoever wins this next clash, wins, no matter how damaged they are. Uncle Kill nodded. The uncle-nephew duo came to a quick decision, and the two quickly converged their auras in anticipation. Their minds raced in thought, sizing up the other and planning their final move. However, it was at this time that their sparring match was forced to a sudden and shocking stop when a blast of wind pushed against not only the two of them but the rest of the party. The force of this wind was so strong that they had to struggle greatly to not be forced off their feet. Hearing a whistling noise above them, everyone looked up, including the little kitten, and were surprised to see a shining azure light blasting through the sky like a human-sized shining arrow. What shocked the little kitten even more was that inside this azure light she could see the vague shape of a blurred person. Flying. A flying magician. The little kitten looked on amazed like most everyone else as that person flew off into the distance, leaving a wind trail in his or her wake. However, they were all shocked to find that the surprise didn't end there, as one of the soldiers suddenly pointed into the distance where everyone could clearly see two more azure forms blast through the sky, passing by in a matter of seconds towards the same general direction as the first person. What's happening? The little kitten suddenly felt like something was happening, as even she could tell by the pure looks of disbelief on everyone that seeing three people flying with such ease like this was not a common sight even in this world of magicians and magical beasts. Chapter 20, Arrival. A magician? One of the servants was the first to ask. A sky magician? A soldier answered with a look of awe. Many of the Wilderwolf soldiers and servants were exclaiming aloud in their collective shock, and even Jonathan and Uncle Kill's expressions had a slight hint of surprise as they watched those specks of azure blue vanish into the horizon. Meow. Sky magician? Why haven't I heard about them before? In her confusion, she tilted her head towards Jonathan, who wasn't too far away from her at this point. As if understanding her thoughts, he promptly spoke. Little lass, in this world magicians are split into stages, rank, and then realm. For example, I am of the late stage, inner haven rank, earth realm. Earth realm takes up the first 4 ranks a magician can have, ending with the spirit rank. After the spirit rank, a magician leaves the confines of the earth and learns to fly even without the use of a spell and enters the sky realm. Sky magicians are very powerful and there are very few of them. In Falsio, there are only around 20 of them. At this point, Uncle Kill's eyes lit up with a sense of pride as he proudly declared. That's right, and 4 of them belong to the Wilderwolf family. Meow. Yeah. Both of my parents have reached the sky realm along with my grandfather, and finally one of my aunties is also a sky magician. TCH. Ah, to think that in the end it was your father and our sister that ended up advancing to the sky realm, leaving me, the oldest, behind in the dust. It won't be just him leaving you in the dust. Jonathan's mouth curved into a taunting grin, greatly annoying his uncle, whose eyebrows turned sharp like daggers. Oh, says the fool of a nephew who was going to get his ass kicked. All right, come on, this fight ain't done, Uncle Kills said with fists clenched. You're on. Jonathan immediately replied, and the two were at each other once more. Half an hour earlier, to the far east of the continent, several thousand miles away from Falsio, in a large empire called Claw Reverence. It was here that a shocking event was about to take place. There was wilderness in every direction, and the sky was a bright blue. Everything was peaceful as animals and magical beasts alike wandered below the trees and birds flew with ease in the sky. But in a matter of a second, everything in the surrounding area seemed to freeze. All life didn't stop due to time stopping or any other magical means. No, they all froze due to a singular feel. A deep feeling of extreme fear. Rip. In the sky above the wilderness, a crack in the sky scattered out, and every being in a several-mile radius suddenly felt a large pressure press down on them. They didn't dare move lest they notify this foreign presence of their existence. That crack continued to grow bigger and bigger until finally it was around 8 feet in height and 3 feet in width. The cracking stopped and suddenly reality seemed to bend. The cracks intertwined and pieces seemed to break off and vanish to dust. In the gaps between the cracks that opened up there seemed to be what looked like a landscape of stars. It was like looking at the universe. More and more pieces of the area broke off until finally only an oval shape remained, looking like a portal to the universe outside. Suddenly, in the center of that oval, a ripple began to flow outwards with increasing intensity until a pale hand reached outwards. Following that, At an incredibly slow pace, a full body was revealed as it came out of this portal limb by limb. In the end, this person was revealed to be a young adult male with an extremely horrifying appearance, as his whole body was covered in a shocking amount of blood. Large gaping wounds littered his body, and there was even a large scimitar sticking out of his back. His long black hair was disgruntled and sweat trickled down his battered body. His eyes held an evil glint and his pearly white teeth were clenched tight as he bared the pain that felt like 1,000 cuts. Despite his ragged and horrid appearance, one could tell that his facial features could be seen as quite handsome. Upon his body he wore a tattered dark violet robe that looked like it had been through a grinder. Upon exiting the portal, it immediately condensed until eventually vanishing. The man held a disbelieving expression as he first looked at his 2 ragged hands, as if confirming his existence before surveying the surrounding area. However, his eyes didn't seem to just survey the surrounding area but through reality itself. Done with his surveying, the man suddenly roared to the sky in a bellow of laughter. Ha 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 ha. Not only did I survive those old bastards' onslaught, I even discovered the lost world. Ha 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 ha. Upon hearing this crazed laughter, all life in the surrounding began to cower in fear. This was an existence that could end their little lives with a single thought. When his mad laughter came to an end, the man began to speak to himself. So there is a way to get to the lost world. When I recover, I'll have the power to rule over this whole land. The highest power here are only emperor magicians, they are hardly a threat to my esteemed self. Ka ha ha. First though, I need to recover. By using that method, I should be able to recover in around 100 years. And when I quell this world, I'll have the power to retaliate. I'll kill every single one of those old bastards. One by one. When that foreign man surveyed the entire world, most people didn't notice. In fact, less than 0.1% of the whole population of the world noticed this gaze upon them. These people that did notice were all magicians of this so-called emperor rank. This gaze felt like a huge pressure, they felt the power of a being beyond them, and every single one of them felt a sense of impending danger. In a rapid dash, these powers gathered a few powerful allies and set off towards the east. Towards the Claw Revenant's empire. Towards the source of this gaze. Sky realm magicians and magical beasts across the world were all flying at top speeds. From powerful rulers of kingdoms and empires to hidden experts. A large gathering of the world's strongest was soon to take place. Back in Falsio, in the capital city of Falcon. In the northern nobles district. In a large estate was the home of a certain large family of the Falsio kingdom. The Wilderwolf family. In one room a middle-aged man sat alone behind a desk filled with sheets of paper and a large amount of open and closed books. This room was the head of the Wilderwolf family's study room. Books laid abandoned on the floor and mysterious items were held behind locked glass cupboards. The man himself held an imposing but warm presence. He held features that closely resembled Jonathan's and had eyes that seemed to hold a great amount of wisdom. His person seemed to exude a scholarly-like presence, aided by his neat noble clothing and a pair of glasses that sat neatly upon the bridge of his nose. Like Jonathan, his hair was a jet black color. Currently this middle-aged man was looking in an eastward direction with an expression that was hard to read. Suddenly the sound of footsteps grew in increasing clarity, and soon a female figure could be seen opening the 2 wooden doors to the study, the light outside lighting up the dimly lit room for a few seconds before disappearing as she entered the room in haste. This woman was a beautiful middle-aged woman with short jet black hair that didn't even reach her shoulders. She was dressed in a sleeveless white robe, and her eyes that were usually cold and aloof were now showing a look of confusion and apprehension. "Brother." The woman's raspy voice spoke out in a hurried fashion. "Did you also feel it?" "Yes." The middle-aged man replied, a deep sigh escaping his lips. "I thought as much. That item of yours is quite helpful, it's even a threat to an emperor magician like myself despite you only being a king magician. But this is not important. What do you think was behind that presence, young brother?" The woman spoke as she came to a still just beyond the man's desk. "This is an entity beyond the sky realm. Even though we knew they existed, to actually encounter one. Whatever happens, it will be a huge event for this whole world." The middle-aged man answered, his voice solemn. I would assume at this moment that all the strongest powers should be converging towards the east. What about you, sister? Yes, I have to go. The woman quickly responded with a determined gaze. I can't stand back when a potential world-ending presence threatens our world. I'll not lose anyone else. Seeing his sister's eyes turn hazy, he could only nod in understand. Lee. Take Sindria and father. As the head of the family, I'll stay behind and take care of our home. You'll find Sindria and grandfather on a mission in the southern walls. Got it, brother. By my side, no one will even touch a hair on sister-in-law and father. The middle-aged woman, Lee responded firmly. Be safe. He nodded. Of course, brother. What do you take your big sister for? Lee laughed as she exited the room. Her eyes that once contained uncertainty were now filled with the determination to protect all that is dear to her. When Lee left the room, the man let out a deep sigh as his intertwined fingers tightened. Sindria. Please be safe, for me and our children. After muttering this to himself, light lit up the room as the just-closed door suddenly opened up once more and another woman walked into the study. Actually, it would be more accurate to call this newcomer a girl. With the light from the outside corridor lighting her frame, the little girl skipped into the room like a little angel. She had delicate features and the chubby cheeks appropriate for a 4-year-old. Her long blonde hair danced with every step and her eyes were a bright violet color that held a powerful attraction. It was clear she was going to grow up to be a beautiful woman even at such a young age. Upon her body she wore a simple pink one-piece dress that fluttered behind her. Her voice rang out and sounded like the chiming of little bells, delicate and pleasing to the ears. Daddy, Daddy, when is Mummy coming back? Seeing his cute youngest daughter skipping into view, the middle-aged man's previously aloof expression couldn't help but soften and he even laughed for the first time. Ha ha ha. It's always Mummy this and Mummy that with you. Has Daddy disappeared in your eyes? The little girl's skipping comes to a stop as she reached her daddy's side as she answers with a tilt of her chubby head. Of course Andrea sees you, Daddy. You're right in front of Andrea. Haha, never mind. Your mummy should have been back tomorrow, but sadly another matter has come up. She'll probably be gone for another month this time. The girl's father spoke apprehensively. It was clear it hurt him to tell his young daughter such news. No. Why? The little girl called Andrea cried out as her 2 little hands slapped down upon her father's thighs. Tears seemed to threaten to fall and this reaction deeply hurt the middle-aged man who quickly picked her up and settled her on his knees. I know, little un. But this matter is really important, so can my little un be a big girl for a while and when Mummy returns I'll make sure she can have a big vacation so you can spend a lot of time with her and me. As he spoke he rocked her back and forth on his knee to calm her down. But Andrea misses Mummy. Andrea spoke dispiritedly, her head hanging low. I know. But remember that in a week, your big brother and sister will be returning from the academy for vacation and eventually, in a few months' time, your bigger brother Jonathan and Uncle Kill will be returning. By then, you'll have plenty of people to play with. Her father consoled her. Haha, Andrea hasn't seen them in so long. Andrea's violet eyes lit up and she began clapping her hands in her excitement, her supposed sadness gone in a flash with brighter thoughts. I wonder what new magic Jonathan will show Andrea this time. I'm sure he'll have plenty of fun things to show you. Her father laughed at her quick change in mood. Now then, how did you escape from your nanny's grasp this time, Andrea's clapping came to an abrupt stop and her little lips clamped shut as her violet eyes spied her daddy's expression. Seeing that he wasn't truly angry she giggled. Andrea used magic. Andrea created a new door in the playroom. It's so pretty and pink like my dress, Daddy. Ha ha ha. Your nanny will be all in a worry again. Oh well, how about we go find her before she goes alerting the guards or something? He could only shake his head and laugh, having been used to this troublemaker's many antics. How about Daddy sing you a lullaby? Yippee, Andrea loves Daddy's voice. Andrea likes Mummy's voice more but Daddy's voice is good too. Andrea's bell-like laughter filled the room and her father picked her up in his arms and headed out of the study as she swung her head back and forth in joy. Ah, little un hates Daddy. Her father mock cried to his daughter's confusion and she tried to console her father once more to his amusement. In a large room fit for a little girl of a noble stature, Andrea's eyes drooped close and her breathing mellowed out as sleep overtook her. Her father's wonderful singing trailed off as he turned to his thoughts while looking lovingly at his youngest daughter with a conflicted gaze. To be able to use magic to such a level at such a young age. Sigh. Looks like the Wilderwolf family has another little monster on our hand. When her elemental threads take form, she's going to be quite the troublemaker. Let's just hope she doesn't align to anything too powerful. Else, it will be hard for her to have a peaceful life. With a long sigh, he walked towards the bedroom door and with a last look to the sleeping form of Andrea, closed the door and headed off with multiple thoughts. From the genius level of magical ability that Andrea had that equaled his genius eldest son Jonathan's to the unknown danger of a power beyond the sky realm. The future seemed so uncertain. Whatever happens, Alexander Wilderwolf will not let anyone threaten the Wilderwolf family. With renewed determination, Alexander Wilderwolf headed in the direction of his study with plans to help in his protection of those dearest to him, his family. Chapter 21, Gathering of the Sky Magicians. In the far east of the world in the Claw Reverence Empire. Above a large expanse of wilderness, 3 figures suddenly appeared in an azure glow. Swoosh. The 3 figures came to a stop in the sky and the azure glow around their bodies dimmed until it vanished. The 3 figures stood in the air as if they were standing on flat ground and surveyed the surrounding area with looks of apprehension. These 3 figures were 2 men and 1 woman. One of the men was an elderly man with a long white beard with pale white skin that made him look sickly, though he carried himself with a youthful vigor. The second man held a cold expression and wore a long gold and violet robe with many intricate details. By his side, the woman stuck close to him. She was a woman of worldly beauty with long black hair and her expression was just as cold as the other man, if not more so. Emperor Reverence, I am unable to find this mysterious figure, the old man with the long white beard spoke with a hint of fear. Humph. This bastard shows up in my empire 1 second and vanishes the next. What's happening? Emperor Reverence growled, his cold eyes darting left and right. Calm down, husband. Grumbling about it won't fix anything. The woman retorted with narrowed eyes before moving to a new topic as she faced westward. Being that this thing arrived in our empire, it is only natural that we arrived first. I think it's safe to assume that we will be receiving many visitors this fine evening. Emperor Reverence sighs. I feel 10 sky magicians have already entered the bounds of my empire. It's nice to meet you again, Emperor, a loud voice shouted out in a gleeful manner and a second later new figures appeared above the wilderness. There were 2 of them. 2 men holding hands. The man on the left was an effeminate man with long blonde hair and delicate features. The other had short curly brown hair and was quite tall. The blonde effeminate man had a warm feeling to him while the curly brown-haired man seemed to be a silent figure. It was the blonde man who spoke earlier. Oh. The sun-blessed couple, it has been a long time. Emperor Reverence replied aloofly. Where are the rest of our Claw Reverence's sky magicians? The blonde effeminate man asked with a teasing smile. Are they truly so slow? I have ordered all sky magicians to prepare themselves in waiting. No need to put all our forces towards something we have no clues about. The Emperor Reverence's wife spoke up for him. Who knows if this isn't some trick of that damn winding dragon empire or even the work of the barbarians in the bone graveyard. Ha ha ha. As calculative as always, Empress dear, the blonde effeminate man laughed heartily. Oh. The curly brown-haired man mumbled for the first time as he turned to face the west. Ah, they've arrived. People from the Falsio kingdom and its allies it seems. The old man with the long white beard spoke. Swoosh. 8 figures appeared in a grand glow of azure color. At the helm of this group was a woman with short jet black hair and cold eyes. It was Lee Wilderwolf. Greeting, Emperor Reverence. Lee bowed. We shall wait for the rest to arrive before we begin our search. Emperor Reverence nodded in greeting. I have a feeling this person has gone into hiding, and if we find this person, I'm afraid our small group would lose our small lives. Yes, I agree. Lee nodded in understanding and turned to the rest of her group. Sister-in-law, what do you think is behind all of this? A woman by her side was the first to speak. She was a beautiful middle-aged woman with medium-length blonde hair and had attention-grabbing violet eyes. She gave off the impression of someone both kind and mature. She looked like a grown-up Andrea. This was obviously her mother, Sindria Wilderwolf. I'm also confused. Why did this person, or thing appear and disappear so fast? What's the purpose of surveying the whole world? An older gentleman spoke next. This old man had a bald head, short grey beard and eyes that seemed to hold old age wisdom. Father, sister-in-law, I am not too sure either. It's most likely that this person had just arrived in this world and was checking where he was. Lee spoke in contemplation, her fingers on her chin. Why you mean? Sindria had a look of disbelief, latching onto the phrase just arrived in this world. Are you saying that this might be a being from outside? Lee's father asked with a complex look. Maybe. If that's the case, we'd be in real trouble. Lee sighed. It's confusing. He's not made any moves, so from that we can assume he might not be aggressive. However, he also hasn't greeted us when he obviously knows we know of his existence. Instead it seems he has gone into hiding. Do you think something is forcing this person into hiding? Sidria pondered aloud. Like, maybe he has extreme fear towards strangers. Lee responded with a half-hearted glare. This isn't the time for one of your poor excuses for a joke, Sindria. Sorry. Sindria apologized, though not forgetting to stick her tongue out in a playful manner. Lee just shook her head helplessly, a chuckle tugging at her straightened lips. At this moment more figures appeared and all of them could feel the presence of several other sky magicians heading in their direction at fast speeds. Soon, over 100 sky magicians had gathered and everyone immediately went into conversation as questions and theories were thrown out one after the other. With no certain answer, the most important figures agreed to begin the search. And so, for several hours, these terrifying figures began a large area search, not only around the wilderness and not even in the confines of the Claw Reverence Empire. They were searching all across the continent. Yet, no matter how long and how deeply they searched, no results were shown. Surprisingly, the mysterious foreign man had hardly went far. In fact, he was directly below the area he had entered into this world. Deep underground, a large room had been dug out with no exit. On the walls were a deeply intricate display of golden-colored runes. In the center of the room was where he sat with legs crossed. His condition was still rough, however he was now wearing a clean pair of robes and his body had been cleaned up. Yet every few minutes he was spitting out blood and coughing in pain. Those old bastards. The man growled with clenched teeth. To think that the great Night Walker would end up like this. Half dead on an uncivilized piece of CR*P planet like this. Alas, this is also my great fortune as it's perfect for my recovery plan. With a deep grin the man who called himself Night Walker suddenly pulled back the sleeve on his left hand and held it out in front of himself, wrist facing the ceiling. It's time to begin. Night Walker coldly mumbled before suddenly, a long scalpel appeared in his right hand. With steady hands he lined up the edge of the blade on his wrist and viciously cut into his flesh. Chapter 22, Blood Clone. The knife cut into his deadly pale skin and with calm hands, he drew a line downwards until around half of his forearm was cut. Blood leaked out in spurts, but strangely the blood didn't fall or drip to the floor but simply floated above his wrist. Once the cut was complete and his right hand retreated the blade to wherever it originated from, Night Walker began to hum a chant. The crimson blood that floated above his wrist flowed forward and coalesced into a ball of blood the size of a fist. Be born, blood clone. With this command bellowing out, the ball of blood suddenly rippled crazily and the next second began flowing rapidly in a swirling mess. Finally, the crimson blood began to glow in an azure glow that expanded outwards and started to take form. Seconds passed and the azure glow had only grown a few centimeters outside the swirling mass of blood. Minutes passed and it had only grown around 100 centimeters. Hours passed and finally around a meter of azure glow now surrounded the floating mass of blood. Finally, after a full day's work, that azure glow reached its apex at a little less than 2 meters. Having grown to its apex, the aura that was this azure glow began to rotate and take form. Another day passed and the end result of the aura's formation could be clearly seen standing in front of the foreign magician called Night Walker. It was a complete clone of himself, just that it was a body colored fully in azure and that it also gave out a dim glow. Now, to create the illusion. Night Walker at this point was sweating and clenching his teeth in his desperation. This spell had taken a lot out of him in his weakened state, and if he failed at this point he would suffer a rebound that could even end in his death. Blood clone completion. With a last shout, the azure glow of the blood clone's body suddenly retreated and then a fleshly color began to form at the clone's stomach and spread outward until finally a perfectly copied form of Night Walker was fully birthed into existence. At this point, Night Walker's pale skin had turned scarlet and his robe had turned damp in his sweat, yet his lips were twisted into a cold grin. "What are your orders, true self?" The blood clone asked as he bowed, one knee on the floor in a subservient manner. "Ha ha ha. It's time to put the Reaper magical arts to some good use," Night Walker said with a wide grin, and his blood clone's eyes flashed with a look of understanding. "Exit this room and create mayhem above. Slowly integrate an underground society and spread the Reaper magical arts and gather me souls to consume. With the souls of thousands of magicians I can fix the great damage those old fogies have done to this one's great soul. It shall be done," the blood clone answered simply before vanishing from the room. "Now, all I can do is steadily heal myself and wait patiently." Returning to 2 days ago. To the west of the continent, several thousands of miles from the unprecedented event that took place in the Claw Reverence Empire. Back in the north of Falsio, the glistening moon had reached its peak and the spar between Jonathan and Uncle Kill had long passed. The match had lasted for several minutes and only ended when Jonathan had tired himself out completely and could no longer go on. The rest of the day passed as they continued their travels while Uncle Kill endlessly bragged about his victory and the little kitten couldn't help but cry in her thoughts. "Aren't you a few decades older than Jonathan, and a whole rank ahead of him? Isn't it a little childish to be bragging about a victory under such favorable conditions?" Jonathan seemed to take this in stride, however, as he had only walked along, gently caressing the bundle of fur in his hand while she was concentrating on her meditation. And now, with the darkness surrounding them, everyone has settled down for the night on a large but flat hill a few dozen meters from the dirt road. They were still in a grassy field and there was no civilization in sight, only grass, dirt, a few trees and the faint sight of a few mountains which could be seen clearly if it were not in the darkness of night. Food having been ate and tired after a day's travel, most everyone had gone to sleep. However, inside Jonathan's tent, where he and the little kitten should be sleeping, the both of them were instead cultivating their auras, with the little kitten's goal being to make her breakthrough tonight. She has been at the peak of middle stage for a while now and she is now in the process of making the breakthrough. This can take several tries as she attempts to condense the fist-sized glow that is her soul until it is no more than the size of a speck of dust. This has been a long process and she has spent the whole day of her cultivation doing this, and even now her soul is still the size of a pebble, still a distance away from her goal. Over and over again, the glow of her soul was becoming smaller in size by the minute. Next to the meditating little kitten, Jonathan, who was also meditating, suddenly stopped and turned his head towards her. He could sense the condensing of her spirit and the signs of a breakthrough having begun. "How long has it been since she's been cultivating?" "1 week. That's quite miraculous considering it's meant to take magical beasts a lot longer to cultivate than magicians." As Jonathan looked on, a grin eventually showed on his lips. "It's begun." Thwoom. A low thrumming sound echoed throughout the tent. Inside the little kitten, she could see that her soul was now the size of a speck of dust. It didn't stay that size for long, however, as that small speck suddenly exploded into a dazzling display of a deep blue color like the ocean. Prepared for this, Jonathan shielded his eyes with the back of his right hand as his grin grew wider. In a tent horizontal to theirs, a certain older gentleman had stopped his own cultivation to face in their direction where he could see the tent light up in that deep blue color. He simply let out a small laugh and a pleased smile before returning to his cultivation. In seconds, that deep blue light receded in a flash, eventually condensing into her soul once again and returned to but the size of a pebble once more. While the kitten could tell the size of her soul was much like the size it was when she first came to this world, She could also feel an oppressive feeling when gazing upon her soul that hinted of a greater power. Her soul was much more condensed, and she could tell that for her cultivation to reach the peak of late stage was going to take more than 2 times the time it took to reach the peak of middle stage. She could only sigh at this revelation. It's about what I expected, I guess. It's only going to take longer and longer to advance as time moves on. Ha ha ha. Congratulations, little lass, you can now be considered a proper magical beast. Now that you are in the late stage, those spells you have been learning will show their true power to you. Jonathan laughed with a charming smile. Meow. That night, the little kitten chose to cultivate a little longer to help stabilize her soul before drifting off into a comfy sleep on top of Jonathan's sleeping bag. Jonathan only joined her a while later. His own cultivation would still take a very long time before he would encounter his own breakthrough, but that was the way of the magician. Chapter 23, First Battle. Upon the arrival of dawn the next day, with no magical beasts to slay, the Wilderwolf party decided to continue their travels northwards. Currently, all 11 of them were walking, or being carried, upon the dirt path that lead to Evergale City far behind them. In their surroundings, they could see that the grassy fields have turned into several hills of various sizes, and not too far from them were various small mountains. With the amount of mountains we're seeing, we should be only a day or 2 from the northern lands. One of the soldiers spoke as his eyes roamed his surroundings while another soldier nodded in agreement. Meanwhile, the little kitten had also refrained from her meditation to have a quick look around. Having been a city cat, she had not seen any mountains before, and the large size of these mountains reminded her of the skyscrapers from her old world. Though these mountains weren't quite that large to be compared to the mountains in the northern lands, also Jonathan has told her, they still impressed her with their grand size. The party continued their journey northward, and soon the moon was beginning to descend once more, and the party chose to take refuge in a small forest beneath one of the larger mountains in this area. Because this was but a small forest, there were little more than minor magical beasts here and the rare early-stage major magical beast. As the sky was turning to night, a few dozen meters away from the newly set-up encampment, 2 shadows, one big and one small, were walking through the forest at a cautious pace. Okay, little lass, be careful and remember, if you are in danger, retreat quickly and I'll jump in to help you, got it? Jonathan whispered to his feline companion. Meow. The little kitten replied with excitement. She was finally going to experience a magical battle by hunting down a magical beast. A grin surfaced on Jonathan's face as he suddenly held out his right hand in a signal for the little kitten to stop. It was at this time that she also noticed a shadowed figure in the darkness of the forest ahead. With the power of her magic, she concentrated her aura into her 2 feline eyes and thus was now able to see this magical beast more clearly with her enhanced night vision. This magical beast wasn't the largest of beasts, only being around the size of a large dog. It was somewhat gorilla-like with excessively long forearms that seemed to exude strength. Its dark blue fur hid it well in the night, but still, under the trained eye of a magician such as Jonathan, it was easily found. Recognizing this beast, Jonathan leaned towards the little kitten and whispered. This is the Earth Smasher gorilla. This beast can use some earth elemental attacks, but due to it being only a middle-stage magical beast, it should only have 1 spell. This is the Earthwave spell. This spell will activate when it strikes the ground. Its aura fuses with the earth and sends out an attack through the earth which takes on the form of a wave-like shape, bellowing outwards to around a dozen meters in front of it. This spell isn't powerful and won't damage you unless you're unlucky, as the main purpose of this spell is to disorientate the enemy, allowing the beast time to escape or deal a sneaky blow. Meow. The little kitten meowed quietly with a nod. Good luck. Jonathan spoke before taking a few steps back, letting the little kitten take the front stage. With a soft sigh, the little kitten renewed her vigor and her eyes gleamed in a determined light. Her body crouched low as she began to slowly tiptoe her way closer to the Earthcrusher gorilla as she thought her plan of attack. I should refrain from using the Ravager armor from the get-go. When activating it, it will shine quite brightly and isn't suitable for sneaking. The only other spell I have gained enough insight into to use at this moment is the Celestial Claw spell, which should be perfect for a quick and deadly sneak attack. Only if my first attack fails will I equip the Ravager armor. At this point, The little kitten was less than a dozen meters away from her prey. The Earthcrusher gorilla was rather still, as it seemed to be feasting on some sort of animal which she couldn't see due to its body blocking her sight as she stalked it from behind. Suddenly, the magical beast paused from its eating and suddenly raised its head, and the little kitten knew that it had sensed something was wrong. "I can't wait any longer, gotta go." The little kitten whispered an inaudible chant, and aura quickly coalesced around her right paw in a soft azure glow that quickly vanished and formed into 4 white claws that floated a few inches above her paw. As quick as lightning, her right claw lashed out, and those 4 white claws shot out in long white lines that sped at a speed that was shocking to behold. Despite noticing this deadly attack ahead of time, the Earthcrusher gorilla could only react in time to dodge the majority of the attack. 3 of the white lines shot past it and cut into trees and bushes, shooting up debris chaotically. Meanwhile, the leftmost claw struck flesh and dug into the gorilla's body. A large spray of blood erupted from its left shoulder and down into its chest. "Gwa!" The Earthcrusher gorilla cried in pain as it fell to the ground with its long arms clenched around its gaping wound. The spell had cut a few centimeters into its tough skin and would be deadly if left alone and not treated. Being a wild beast in the forest with no healing abilities, the beast was already doomed to die. The Earthcrusher gorilla was resigned to its fate and decided to not retreat but instead to charge towards the enemy who had sent it to an early grave. The ground beneath its feet cracked and its body shot forward with all its strength. It was using its aura in abandon. The little kitten's eyes shot open. Damn it, using magic in actuality is a lot harder than it is on paper. It actually dodged my attack, and its speed is faster than I thought. No time for the Ravager armor. Her mind worked quickly, and her next course of action was decided in a matter of a few seconds. Azure aura gathered by her 4 feet, and she strengthened her feet to leap just a second before one of the Earthcrusher gorilla's powerful long fists struck her. Instead, its fist struck the ground. The force of that punch resounded in a bang and created a deep indentation into the mud. The little kitten's enchanting voice sang a familiar chant, and with another swipe of her left hand another celestial claw was sent out in a dazzling display of ruthlessness that pierced the Earthcrusher gorilla with each of its 4 white lines. Blood sprayed, and the magical beast breathed its last breath instantly. Its wounds were extremely severe as the celestial claw showed off its great sharpness that even cut off one of the beast's thick arms at the shoulder. The little kitten, who was still in the air, landed a second after the beast's death and was silent as it watched the beast lying still intently. The little kitten's mind was abuzz as it processed her thoughts in quick succession, and her emotions were a mixture of joy and discontentment as she reflected on her first battle. Chapter 24, The 3 Empires and the 2 Kingdoms. I can't believe I alerted the enemy like that. It must have sensed my aura. It seems my control over my aura isn't as good as I thought it was. I'll have to practice my control over my aura for sure. I also was unable to track the Earthcrusher gorilla's trajectory when I attacked with my first celestial claw spell. If I had read its body movements ahead of time, maybe I could have aimed my attack to kill the beast in that first blow. The little kitten sighed. It seems that these are all things I'll learn with experience. I also have to train my celestial claw attack. I haven't had the chance to gain more insight into that spell since my breakthrough yet. If I had, maybe that attack would have instantly taken the enemy's life regardless. Also, it was quite the experience taking another thing's life. In my past life, I'd done my fair share of hunting critters and vermin. So I'm not too affected, but it's still a strange feeling, especially with my newfound intelligence. I could read every emotion displayed on the beast's face up to its death. Oh well, there's no going back now. This is the world I'm living in now, and these wild magical beasts are meant to be viscous creatures who wouldn't even spare a second thought to killing children and newborn. Jonathan has spoke of certain magical beasts who are more civilized, and he has even said that there are even magical beasts that strive for peace and disdain bloodshed. I wonder if I'll be able to meet such magical beasts. Maybe there's a species of cat magical beast that I can befriend out there. Is there truly a magical beast like myself out there? As the little kitten was in deep thought, Jonathan had walked out of his hiding place and was now sitting cross-legged next to her. Noticing this, the little kitten looked up at him to see him return her gaze with a soft smile. Seems like you're beating yourself up over this battle. To be honest, you made many mistakes, but they'll all be mended with time and experience. We've got plenty of time this morning, let's get you plenty of experience, little lass? Meow. The little kitten meowed enthusiastically. That morning, the little kitten and Jonathan spent a full 2 hours patrolling the small forest and encountered several mid-stage magical beasts and even a high-stage magical beast. Through constant battles, the little kitten found that her insight into her 2 spells were growing stronger without the help of the Echo Stone, and maybe even at a faster pace. From this, she could figure that while the Echo Stone is good for the initial learning experience, putting your spells in action is ultimately the best training method. Now, her Ravager armor spell could be formed with 40% metal, which greatly enhanced its defense. This is a great improvement to the pitiful 5% she could summon during her time as a mid-stage magical beast. Now, her defense was quite strong. For example, when the little kitten fought against the high-stage magical beast, a red-fanged boar, and suffered a tackle from the beast, her Ravager armor was able to lessen the damage by half. Though she still suffered a good amount of damage, she still managed to win the battle in the end with a final Celestial Claw attack. Her Celestial Claw spell had improved to such a degree that it was capable of cutting several centimeters into the red-fanged boar's infamously tough skin, and with a well-placed strike to the brain, the little kitten's final strike was able to instantly kill the beast to its shock. To think it, a great high-stage magical beast was felled by a small kitten that it should be able to crush just by sitting on it. The beast held a confused and shocked expression even upon death. With a magical potion, Jonathan healed the wounds she had gained in that battle, and now in the present, she was now resting asleep in his hand as the potion did its work to fix all of her wounds and even her exhaustion that had been gathered through continuous battles all morning. Despite the pain, the little kitten was wearing a smile in her sleep as she basked in the afterglow of her first battle experience and the improvement of her 2 only spells. Her 2 spells were now at a level appropriate to be called a high-stage magical beast spell. As the little kitten rested comfortably in Jonathan's arms, Jonathan and everyone else were walking along the dirt path once more. As the hours went on by, the little kitten eventually woke up and began cultivating while listening to Jonathan as he explained certain things about this world. In this world, there are 5 major powers that split the land. The 3 empires and the 2 kingdoms. The 3 empires are the North Fang Empire to the north, Claw Reverence Empire to the northeast, and finally the Winding Dragon Empire to the southeast. These 3 empires are the strongest of the 5 major powers and take up the most territory. Just below the empires in territory size is our Falsio Kingdom and its 12 allies to the west of this world. And finally, the final power is in the south and is called the 5 Clawed United Kingdoms. The 5 Clawed United Kingdoms take up 5 islands that are shaped like 5 claws off the southern tip of the continent. Beside the 5 major powers, there are 2 other places of note. First is the Forever Forest. This forest is home to the most powerful magical beasts, and they even say that one of the 5 legendary beasts, the Silver Moon Wolf, had even been spotted there once a century ago. You have to understand that the 5 legendary beasts are rarely ever seen, so when one shows up, it's a large event and people will either avoid the area they show up in like the plague or rally to the area like they had found their long-lost love. Finally, the most dangerous territory in this world is the Bone Graveyard. This is a lawless area filled with barbaric tribes that practice demonic magic. Demonic magic feeds off the sacrifices of people, animals, and magical beasts alike and is a forbidden magic in every other territory. You must be thinking, why haven't the other territories banded together to get rid of this threat? Well, it's not that easy, I'm afraid. Firstly, the Bony Graveyard has many powerful magicians with insidious magic that is very hard to contend with. And secondly, and most importantly, the Bone Graveyard is situated in a large desert that is filled with many mysterious phenomenon. The weather is unpredictable and even the residents that live there live on the border of life and death each day. The magical beasts there have also been corrupted by the always present demonic aura and have mutated into strange and terrifying beasts that might not be any stronger than their outside counterparts, but are definitely more deadly and unpredictable. Still, there are many organizations that continue to fight against the demonic barbarians in the Bone Graveyard, and I'd also like to take a stab at the place one day. They say there are several temples there where you can come across various highly valuable magical treasures. It's definitely a must-go for any adventurous and powerful magician. The day continued like this as Jonathan continued to talk with enthusiasm about anything that crossed his mind. Soon, night fell and the Wilderwolf party found shelter at the side of a mountain in a small but robust cave. Tomorrow, they would no longer be at the outer regions of the Northern Mountain Territory and would finally arrive at the Northern Mountains truly. They would then reach Thunder Mountain not long after.